spirituality has a very simple definition. And the definition of spirituality is bliss no matter what. Bliss no matter what is happening. And as simple as that sounds, it's one of the hardest things to achieve. Because who in this room doesn't have something that is stealing their bliss? We all have difficult things that we're going through. Some of us are dealing with problems at home, difficult members of our family. It could be colleagues at work, difficult situations with our job, finances, business not working so well. Some of us are struggling with health problems, while others may be dealing with grief, loss, bereavement. So it's easy to talk about spirituality. It's even easier to learn about it, but applying it is where it becomes difficult. And this is where we need the guidance of simple tools, practical steps, advice. So today I'd like to share with you 3 lessons that we get from the spiritual wisdom called Guru Granth Sahib Ji. 3 lessons on how do you use spirituality in real life, and how do we get to that point where we experience bliss no matter what is happening. For those of you who are familiar with the spiritual wisdom called Guru Granth Sahib, you might have an app on your phone. So I'd like you to take your phones out and see if you have those translation apps for those of you who have Gurbani on your phones. And I'm going to go through one particular verse, and then we can see how do we take out lessons from that verse. So the Shabad, the verse that I'd like us to look at today, is by Guru RAMDAS Ji. And in this verse, we're going to learn 3 lessons on how to achieve practical spirituality. The verse starts, Har jan Ram Naam Gun Gave. The divine servant continually sings and praises the divine name. Je koi nind kare har jan ki, apna gun na gawave. Even if someone insults the divine servant, they do not give up their good qualities. So there's a lesson there that we can learn. In the very opening lines, the first lesson that we learn is hold on to your divine qualities. Remember what we're talking about today. We set a goal, we set a standard. Bliss no matter what is happening. And the first lesson that we learn from this verse is that those who are of a higher nature, those spiritual, enlightened masters, in this particular verse, it refers to them as servants of the divine, Harjan. It says something very interesting. Even if someone criticizes them, they do not lose their spiritual qualities. No matter what is happening, even if someone is right in their face. Can you imagine? We've all been in that situation where somebody is very angry with us. They may be using rude words against us, accusing us of things that we may or may not have done. How do we react? Immediately we start to defend ourselves. And sometimes what you'll notice is whatever the other person is projecting, we will try and match that same level. If they're speaking in a calm voice, we might respond in a calm way. But if they start raising their voice, for some reason, we feel we also have to start raising our voice. We have to get our point across just as well, if not better than the other person. But the first lesson is hold on to your own higher qualities, divine qualities. How do we actually do that? First, we have to understand, well, do I have any divine qualities? What are my divine qualities? And I've found that it all starts with something called peace. How many of us would like to experience more peace in our life? Can I see a show of hands? It should be a lot of us. Yeah? You know, I'll give you an example. When I was younger, in my 20s, even in my 30s, I was, like most young people, very willing to be hot-headed. If somebody was arguing with me, I had no problem arguing back with them. Why shouldn't I say what I believe to be right? And over time, I noticed that the argument may last a couple of minutes, but the effect stayed with me for days. Can anyone relate to that? And what was even more annoying was the person that I'm arguing with seemed to get over it very quickly. But me, I was holding on to it for days. So maybe after a couple of hours, they're okay. And they want to talk to you like nothing has happened. And I'm thinking, no, something's happened. I'm still not okay. I haven't let go. But it was because I matched their energy. Whatever they were projecting, however they were speaking to me, I had to speak in the same way. So if they were shouting, I had to shout back. But for whatever reason, it stayed with me much longer than it stayed with other people. And over time, I've learned to realize that was that worth me losing my peace? And for me, now peace has become so valuable that it's no longer worth me being as hot-headed as I was as a younger man. So I've realized that one of the first spiritual qualities, divine qualities we can call it, starts from peace. And in order to know what peace is, you actually have to go in and spend time with yourself. You have to enjoy the experience of inner peace. And most of us would like to have more inner peace, but we've never even spent much time trying to find inner peace. We imagine inner peace when we're sitting on a tropical beach somewhere, when all our problems have been solved, nobody is ringing our phone and no one is chasing us, the weather is perfect, there's a nice cool drink next to us, we have enough money in the bank that we're not worried that I can't afford to pay for this holiday. We think inner peace comes when all of those things are done. But the truth of the matter is, how many of you have been on holiday and you're still not relaxed? You spend so much time stressing to actually book the holiday, and even when you're there, your kids might be doing something or your partner is doing something else, and even on holiday, you're planning tomorrow, what are we going to do the next day? So you can't even be peaceful while you're sitting on that lovely warm sand. And then you come back from your holiday and you feel like you haven't rested at all. And you need to start booking the next one. So inner peace is not sitting on a tropical beach somewhere. There's a reason why they call it inner peace. You have to go and sit within the beach that's inside you. And in order to do that, you have to find what that is. Where is that? How do we tap into that? So your first step is start to discover, what is this inner peace? Have I really spent some time being in my own self? Do I really know what that is? And the reason this is so important is because there are always going to be times in your life where something happens that takes your peace away. My two sons are still at school age. And from a young age, they've been learning how to swim in their school. The school takes them on swimming lessons. And I give them the example that when you first start swimming, you start at the very shallow end of the pool, right? Where you walk into the pool and you can still touch the ground. And over time, you build up your practice so that you can swim in the deeper end of the pool. And spirituality is a bit like that as well. When I talk about inner peace, when you hear about these things, we think that we have to get up from our daily life and we have to go sit in an ashram somewhere, pay lots of money to go to a retreat, or we have to wake up really early in the morning to go and discover this inner peace. And while all those things are fantastic, what you really need to do is practice in the shallow end of the pool, which means small little moments of inner peace while you're going about your day-to-day life. So what I want you to do is think about moments in your life, even today. What is something small that has triggered you today? Maybe it's members in your family, maybe it's children, maybe it's just being late. I heard a wonderful thing once where someone said, if you think you're spiritual, try spending 7 whole days with your family members. All your spirituality goes out of the window. Just spend 7 days with your own family members. It's hard, isn't it? We learn all these things, but when it comes to applying it, it becomes so difficult. So what is one thing today that has triggered you? And how did you respond? There's nothing like being late to see how quickly you can go from 0 to 100. Yeah? Quickly, let's get out the door. Come on, I told you, put your shoes on. I told you we should have been there 5 minutes early. Right? Notice how you go from 0 to 100. You could be perfectly fine, and then you look at the clock and you realize you're 5 minutes late. What is that emotion? What's going on inside you? Spirituality isn't something that needs to be done in some complicated way, or you have to go somewhere fancy to do that. Spirituality is bliss, no matter what is happening. So I teach my kids that you learn to swim in the shallow end of the pool, so that one day, if you are in difficult waters, you've already built up your practice. And for us, the shallow end of the pool is the small, tiny little things that trigger us. Practice your peace and apply them in those little micro moments throughout your day. So that when some of the more challenging situations happen in life, we have built up our tolerance. We've learned how to deal with them. But if you don't do them in these micro moments, you will not be able to handle some of the bigger things. So the first lesson is, hold on to your qualities. Hold on to your divine qualities. And learn how do you practice them in those day-to-day moments. Let's carry on with this verse to see how this higher wisdom teaches us to apply this in our day-to-day life. The verse continues, जो किछ करे सो आपे स्वामी, हर आपे कार कमावे. Whatever is being done by the Divine Master, who carries out all actions. Har ape hi mat deve swami, har ape bol balave. The Divine Master gives out wisdom, and the Divine speaks their words. There's a really important lesson here. So the first lesson was hold on to your divine qualities. The second lesson is see the divine in all. And what I like to do is to make sure that we don't speak spiritual words in such a way that they sound nice and we feel good about ourselves that we've learned these spiritual lessons, but we don't actually know what does the detail mean. And in this verse, it's saying that the divine is doing everyone's actions for them, and the divine is speaking everyone's words for them. And some of us are thinking, I know people who don't sound very divine, who don't talk to me in a very divine way. So how is it that the divine, that oneness, that universal life force, God, whatever the name is that you're comfortable with, how is that God speaking for that individual who really pushes my buttons, who really knows how to make me feel angry? How can I see God in that other person? And this is probably one of the hardest things to do. Because we've built up a definition of God that God does only good things. Yeah? God is the doer of good things. In fact, in the Christian spiritual tradition, they have a God for the good things, and then all the bad things, they give it to somebody else called Satan. But Guru Nanak makes it simpler. He says, everything is oneness. God is doing everything. Again, when I use this word God, I don't mean some old man with a white beard sitting in the clouds. That's not the God that we're talking about. What we're talking about is oneness, that divine nature, that life force that's in all of us. How do we see that divine force in everyone? Because some people certainly don't act in those ways. And this is where this verse is teaching us that really most people don't know what they're doing. They themselves are simply acting out how they have been trained, how they've been conditioned. When I was at university, I was an IT student. And one of the lessons that I used to find the most difficult was programming, coding. And the lecturer would give us an assignment and he would say, I want you to write some code where the software, once you write your code, is going to produce this result. It needs to be able to do this. It needs to be able to show a box appearing. And so you had to know the code to do it. And it was the hardest subject for me because I never understood it. And, you know, I would always look over at my friends and see, how do you do it? What are you writing down? And try and just copy the same things and put it into the system. But the way that you would do it is you would have to write the code and then you would press the run button. And once you run the button, then it would actually show you whether it's produced the result that the assignment has told you. And as much as I would try, only about 50% of the time I would get it right. And a lot of the times I would look at my friends and I would say, oh, I've done everything right. And then eventually you'd have to put your hand up and ask the tutor to come and have a look. And you would say, I think I've done everything, but it's not producing the right result. And what the tutor would do is he would look through every single line of my code and he would spot the one little mistake. And coding's so difficult, it could be like a simple bracket that you haven't put in and the entire code breaks. But what he would do is he would look at the input, whereas I was focusing on the output. Why is it not showing the right result? The result is not coming out. And he would never look at the result. He would look at the input because he taught me that with the right input, you get the right output. So he would look very detailed and say, there's a comma missing there. There's an extra bracket that you've put over there. And it's something very small. And having that IT background allowed me to recognize that actually we all behave in the same way too. When somebody is acting out in a way that we don't like, we focus on why did you act in this way? Why are you speaking to me in this way? Why did he say that to me? Why did she do these things? Why isn't he doing these things? We focus on the output, but we need to learn to look at what is their inputs. They don't know why they themselves are acting in that way. They are simply acting in that way based on the way that they have been brought up, based on how their programming is, based on their conditioning. And that's what it means that the divine has programmed every person to act the way that they're going to act. And what that allows you to do is it allows you to have a lot more compassion for the other person. You no longer focus on blaming them. You learn to recognize that they themselves are simply acting out their own conditioning, their own programming. And once you understand that, you realize that you can't change people so easily, because they have decades of their own programming that they're simply acting out. But what you then need to focus on is, well, what's my programming? Let me focus on my own code. How do I improve myself? And when you learn this wisdom, you realize that every single person is simply acting out their own programming. And that's where you can take a step back and say, I can see what's going on here. I can see that everyone is programmed in a particular way. And it isn't necessarily true that my programming matches your programming. That's why you and me might not have the same opinions. That's why we're not looking at the same thing and coming up with the same result. Because we're two very different individuals. You know, in your own families, your own brothers and sisters are very different. If you're a parent of more than one child, you know that you bring them up in the same way. Yet, whatever has happened in their own life, their individual circumstances, the small differences that they've had in their own lives, ends up with two different children that are like chalk and cheese, completely opposites. Why is that? Because even though they've had the same external environment, internally they're taking in different things, they're learning different things. So how people are programmed is a very complicated subject. But it allows you to understand and appreciate people in a better way. And the language that's being used in this verse here is recognize that every individual is programmed in their own way. They themselves don't know what they're doing. They're simply acting out their own programming. And you know what's interesting about that? When you can't recognize your own conditioning, and when two people are arguing, both people think they're right. You're arguing very certain that you're the right one. The other person is arguing very certain that they themselves are right. So who's actually right? It becomes very difficult to understand who's right, because people are acting out their own programming. So in their mind, they themselves are completely right. And so it starts to create a world where things aren't so clear, not so black and white. And this is where spiritual wisdom says that each and every person is acting out the way the divine is acting for them. The universe is making them act, the universe is making them speak. And that's hard for us because we're expecting one perfect world where everybody acts perfectly. And that's not the reality of life. So in this second lesson, see the divine in all, we start to take a little bit of a step back and say, I'm not going to argue with you. You see the world in your way, through your lens. I'm seeing the world in my way, through my lens. And it could be that neither of us are right. We both have our own lenses with which we look at life. And so this is something that you have to start becoming comfortable with, which is that there isn't necessarily a right and a wrong. Sometimes it's very clear what is right and wrong. And certainly when you're the victim of somebody who is acting out in a way that's unkind, you can certainly think that they're wrong and you're right. But that isn't a helpful distinction for you. Because what that just creates is this bitterness and resentment within you. I'm so right, why can't they see how right I am? And the other person is also thinking the same thing. I'm so right, why can't they see how wrong they are and how right I am? So who's actually right? So when you begin to recognize people's inputs, you can see that every single person has their own inputs in their own way. And this allows you to stop blaming others. And this allows you to stop expecting everyone to change and act in the way that you think is right. It brings the focus back onto you. What do I need to do? How do I improve? You know, there's a saying that when I was young, I tried to change the world. Then I grew a little bit older and I tried to change other people. And now that I'm much older, I've realized I just need to change myself. How many times have you tried to change other people? How many times has it worked? And it's not to say that we don't try. Sometimes we need to help others. Sometimes other people really do need our support. But what I'm trying to help you with is going back to that original definition of spirituality. Your bliss, no matter what's happening. Help other people. I'm not telling you not to do that. But act from that bliss. Start with your own bliss first. First, review your own code, your own programming. Am I at peace? Am I blissful? If not, then I need to first look at myself. I had a wonderful example the other day, and I told my brother that I was going to share this example, and I said I'm going to steal it. And the example that he gave me, he said, you know, when you're on a plane, and they say that if the oxygen mask comes down, you have to put your own oxygen mask on first before you help someone else. Focus on yours. What do you need to do first? You know, it's really easy to look at everyone else and say, he's doing this wrong, she's doing that wrong. And we all know that one person that thinks that everything that they think is completely right, and they go and try and help everybody else in the idea that they're helping. But really what they're doing is they want everyone to act in the way that they think is right. So put your own oxygen mask on first before you try to help somebody else. And what that does is it changes the whole focus of your life to look at yourself first. And that's probably one of the more difficult things to do, because you don't want to look at yourself. When you look at yourself, you start to see, oh, it's not as nice in here as I thought it was. There's things about my own personality that I have to deal with, that I have to face. There's skeletons in this closet. And when we talk about spiritual masters, these aren't just some magical gurus that have dropped out of the sky. The reason we bow down to them is because they've done the hard work. They've done the work of sorting out their own internal programming first. This is why we bow down to them, because they've done something more difficult than we've ever attempted. And not only have they tried, but they have succeeded in helping themselves, in fixing themselves. And you only have to try a little bit before you realize that there is a long way for you to go. And this all starts with this second lesson. See the divine in all. Recognize that everybody is having to do their own work. You focus on your work. Let's see what the verse teaches us next. Har ape panch tat bisthara, vich tatu panch aap pave, Jan Nanak Satgur mele, Jan Nanak Satgur mele ape, har ape chagar chukave. The divine allows us to meet the true higher wisdom. This is the key now. The divine has made the creation from 5 elements. Everybody is equal. We're all made the same. We all have the same 5 senses inside of us. But only those who have met higher wisdom, only those who are lucky enough to have higher wisdom, have all of their conflicts resolved. And this gives us the third lesson here. Respond with higher wisdom. What is it? Respond with higher wisdom. So we've learnt, hold on to your own divine qualities, see the divine in all, then respond with higher wisdom. One of the questions that I always get when people listen to what I talk about, a big part of what we teach is around acceptance. Learn to accept others. Don't necessarily think you have to change other people. And the question that always comes is, does that mean that I have to accept everything? All the terrible things that are happening in my life, all the people that are being cruel to me? And the answer is always very clear. Acceptance doesn't mean inaction. But if you're going to respond, respond with higher wisdom. And in order to respond with higher wisdom, you first have to reach that space of higher wisdom. That's why you have to work on yourself first. You have to experience inner peace first. You have to sort out your own thinking first. Then you can respond with higher wisdom. It doesn't mean don't do anything. It doesn't mean become a doormat and let people walk all over you. But responding with higher wisdom is something that sounds nice, but what do we normally do? We just react. We don't respond. We just react straight away. And sometimes you've told yourself, I'm not going to react again, and you think you've worked things out within yourself, and then the same person comes along and they just bring you right back to your old habits, your old way of dealing with it. And then you have to ask yourself, what happened? How did I end up back there? Because the same input led to the same output. That same person, maybe somebody that you haven't seen for years, they come in front of you and all of those old emotions come back out again. Yeah, you think you'd solved it by moving away from them, and you see them again and all those emotions come back again. You haven't solved anything. You simply just let them go to the bottom of the pile, and new things have come up, new scenarios, but you haven't really dealt with them. So responding with higher wisdom, recognizing the divine in all, holding on to your spiritual qualities, these are things that might be quick slogans and catchphrases, but really require a lifetime of effort from our part. That's where we need access to this higher wisdom. How are you going to respond with higher wisdom if you don't know what the higher wisdom is? So then you have to surround yourself with this higher wisdom. You have to think, do I even have access to these teachings? Am I spending my time with the right people where we discuss these things? Or am I spending my time with the wrong people? Because the people that you hang around with are your inputs. They're the ones that are coding you, programming you. And some of the conflict that happens is when people themselves are starting down a spiritual journey and their own family members, people that they live with, are not there yet. And they say, what do? I can't leave this person. Sometimes the people that are so close to you, you say, I can't leave them. They're in my life. How do I actually help myself while I'm still with these difficult people, difficult scenarios that we're in? So that's where it's an internal journey. Sometimes you can't change the outside. You can't change the outside world all the time. If you can walk away from them, it's very easy. Please do. There are some people who are just not right for you. And it takes courage. It takes courage to walk away from some people and say, you may have been a person that I needed at a certain point in my life, but this is not what I need right now. That takes courage. Because you're now very acutely aware that the input that they're giving you isn't serving you, isn't working for you. They're the wrong input. And you've been able to make a very clear map in your mind. When I spend time with these people, I start acting like this. And it isn't just the people that you hang around with. There are so many things that are impacting how you react. Your inputs are not just the people around you. Today, we get a lot of our inputs from the social media channels that we're following, the influencers. The truth is, lots of things are influencing you. Who are you choosing to allow to be an influencer in your life? What are you watching on TV that is changing how you think? What shows are you watching? What movies are you looking at? What music are you listening to? All of that are your inputs. It's not just the people that you're hanging around with. So although it sounds very simple, respond with higher wisdom, you have to do a lot of work to get to that point. And then sometimes you think, oh, it's not really worth it. It's too much effort. My life was more simpler before I knew all of the spirituality stuff. But there's a reason why you walked on this path in the first place. Because there was something there that led you to this point. There was something there that said, no, this is not right. There's something in here that I need to focus on. My own inner peace. Which is why I said, first focus on your inner peace. What are your divine qualities? Once you learn a way to tap into your own peace, then many things become clear. I don't want to be hanging around with these people. I don't necessarily want to be watching, consuming this media. I want to read something more fulfilling in my life. You start making these little shifts and changes. And that's the important work that needs to be done. So what have we covered so far? Hold on to your divine qualities. See the divine in all. And most importantly, respond with higher wisdom. But I want to give us some more, even more practical steps. So how do we go about doing that? One of the first lines was, if someone acts in a cruel, bitter way, you don't lose your good qualities. Apna gun na gawave. You don't lose your higher qualities. And so what are the practical steps that we can do for that? I've got a very simple things that I want us to always remember. There are 4 things I want you to avoid. A, B, C, D. Anger, blame, cruelty, and debate. Focus on never responding with these. Anger, blame, cruelty, and debates. The first 3 we understand. So let me talk about debates. That arguing. Try and avoid these. Discussion is far more helpful than debate. And while they sound like similar words, they have a very fundamental difference. When you're discussing with someone, you're trying to work out what is right. When you're debating with someone, you're trying to work out who is right. Discussion is better than debate. And that changes the entire flavor of the conversation that you're having with other people. When you're discussing to work out what is the right thing, the right answer, the right solution to this problem, you're doing it in a calm, cool-headed way. When you're debating, what you're saying is, I know how wrong you are, and I need to raise my voice to tell you how wrong you are. Because debate is about who is right. Discussion is about what is right. So when we respond with higher wisdom, we're talking about looking at ourselves. There's a very interesting word that younger people are using these days, which I had never heard most of my life. And I hear this again and again. I had to Google what it meant. And the word is gaslighting. Anyone know what that word is? It's gaslighting. It means that you're blaming the victim rather than focusing on the person who's doing something wrong. You make the victim feel like they're the one that's wrong. So the scenario has gone wrong because of the victim, not because of the oppressor. And in all of this, some of you might have been thinking, this all sounds a bit like gaslighting. So of all the people that are doing wrong things, we don't focus on them, we focus on ourselves, like we're the problem. This isn't gaslighting. I hope I'm using this term correctly. Anyone tell me if I'm not? Yeah? Sometimes you hear these things and you have to be like, oh, I need to know what these words are. What are these things that people are using? What are these phrases? But this isn't gaslighting. This is retraining our mind. This is simply retraining. Because you can't always change the world. For me, one of the most important lessons that I learned was I can't change the world, but my response is my responsibility. My response is my responsibility. I can't change you necessarily. So this is about not always trying to blame the other person, not being angry at the other person. We understand you are who you are. I'm not going to blame you. I understand that you're acting in the way that you're acting. I may not agree with how you're acting. I certainly wouldn't act in the same way as you. I would hope that you would stop acting in that particular way. But I'm not going to focus my energies on trying to change your decades of programming. I'm going to focus on myself. Because I want to get rid of A, B, C, D in my own behaviors first. And who knows, if I improve the way I act, then it might have an impact on other people because they've seen that there's a better way to respond. But most of us don't do that. We don't respond with higher wisdom. We just immediately react. We go back to our old ways, our own reactions. So getting rid of our own A, B, C, D, making sure that we respond without anger, without blame, without cruel intent in our words, and without debate. Because going back to that original way that I used to act when I was younger, the reason I've been able to recognize some of these behaviors in myself and do some work on myself is ultimately I recognized that those things such as anger, blame, being very hot-headed, those things were harming me ultimately. Because the lasting impact was on me. If I was arguing with someone, I was the one that was suffering for days. It's like arguing with other people is like you're punching yourself in the face. You're hurting yourself. And so eventually you come to realize that you might be the cause of some of your own suffering. Even though there are difficult people out there, even though there are other people and scenarios and circumstances that are happening in your life, which are very challenging, start at the shallow end of the pool. First, try to practice this way of living on the smallest of little things. As soon as you step outside and some tiny little thing happens, which was not what you expected, there's a longer queue than you expected. Your immediate reaction is going to be, oh, why are all these people in front of me? I told you we should have left earlier. Now look at the length of the queue. Yeah, that's your immediate reaction. Take a moment, take a breath. Remember, okay, respond with higher wisdom. Start with inner peace. You have to actually do these things on a day-to-day basis. For these small little things, okay, I'm okay. How do I practice in the shallow end of the pool? Is I practice on these smaller things. I let go. I learn to let go. There's a wonderful phrase which I try and live by. If it comes, let it come. If it goes, let it go. I don't want these to be fancy-sounding catchphrases. They're useful if they rhyme or something because they might stay in our minds. But there's really powerful lessons in some of these things. If it comes, let it come. If it goes, let it go. You know, for many years, one of the most famous kids' movies was Frozen. And the most popular song on there was Let It Go. So I say that there's like the Disney mantra, the Frozen mantra. Let it go, let it go. You know, when you have young children, you can't help. These programs are on all the time. These movies are on all the time. So you're always seeing these things. But you can learn from these things. Let it go. Sounds simple, right? Just let it go. But then you'll start to see when these people come and are in your face and are doing things that you say, I've told you 100 times, don't do that. And they just act in the same way. It's not that easy to let it go. You really have to do work on yourself. And it's all well and good for people like me to come and sit on a stage and give you this wisdom like I've sorted my life out. No, the reason I'm sitting on here is not because I've sorted my life out. The reason I'm sitting on here is because these lessons continue to help me in my life every day. Is that very clear? Don't ever put somebody on a pedestal that they've sorted their lives out. They haven't. We're all working through these things. The reason I'm here is I'm simply sharing the wisdom that has worked for me and continues to work for me. And I continue to try and apply some of these things in my own life. Because who doesn't have difficult scenarios? Look around the room. Who isn't going through something at the moment? Who isn't being challenged by problems with their health, problems with family members, financial, business things? We've all had that. So let's recap. 3 lessons for today. Number 1, hold on to your divine qualities. When you start to practice these things, you really do see that there is higher wisdom within you. There are better ways to react. Hold on to those. Don't let go of them. Don't go back to your old ways, your old habits. Use that higher wisdom that's there. Hold on to your divine qualities. Lesson 2, see the divine in all. Learn to accept people, circumstances, scenarios as they are. They're going to be there. You're not going to have a perfect world where everyone is acting the way you want them to and where no difficult situations are going to keep happening in your life. That's not the reality of life. See the divine in all, recognize the world and be happy with the world as it is. And lesson 3, respond with higher wisdom. And that's the thing that requires practice.
A recent study has shown that over 75% of Sikhs say that their life feels stressful or overwhelming. These feelings can develop into depression, alcohol abuse, or even suicide. We believe that Guru Nanak's wisdom can help transform people's lives. Nanak Naam relies on your donation to help create more videos and podcasts like this to educate people all over the world on how to use Guru Nanak's teachings to improve their emotional, mental, and spiritual well-being. Set up a monthly donation today and help change someone's life. Visit nanaknaam.org/donate.
Okay, so Satpal Viji, one of the questions that we've got is that I married into a satsangi family, i.e. a family who follows another path, but wish to continue my journey in Sikhi and hopefully take Amrit. What is the best way to navigate this?
This is a common scenario where one person wants to follow a specific spiritual path and someone else is in their family who are from a different tradition, a different background. The truth is that there is wisdom in all traditions. And while on the surface they may look very different, they have different practices, different traditions, different backgrounds, what you really should be looking at is, are you both headed in this same direction? Are you both still trying to connect to that same one universal truth? And if you are, then in this particular scenario, you have a bonus. You have the benefit of two traditions within your household. And so it really isn't a question of one tradition versus another. It's a question of whether you're headed in the same direction. Because if you ask 10 different people how to lose weight, you'll get 10 different answers. And none of those answers are wrong. They all have different ways, and you have to see what is the right way for you. Even though you may be in a family where they follow a different tradition and you gravitate towards another one, it doesn't necessarily mean that one is right and one is wrong. It is just simply a question of being sincere with yourself, being sincere and open and honest with the other people around you and saying, what do you get from this? Where are you headed with this? Is it just another community for you? Or is there something deeper? Is there a deeper spiritual path? And are we both seeing it in the same light? And if you do, then you really have the benefit of sharing both of your learnings with each other. So that communication is very important, and making sure that you are talking and being open and honest with each other, and then hopefully gaining the benefit from both of the traditions.
Hi, Sat Sri Akal ji. You said, you talked about responding with wisdom, right? But wisdom is something that seems so relative, right? What I think is wisdom, other one might think as naivety, right? So how does one know that one has wisdom, and how does one get more of it? You know, so that's something that I'd like to hear more about.
Thank you. That's a very important question, that responding with wisdom and acting from higher wisdom isn't necessarily straightforward when you don't know what is that right wisdom itself. And so this is why the most important aspect is for you to first surround yourself with this wisdom. Do you have access to the higher wisdom first? And an easy way to think about it is, if you were to start a new career, if you were to change jobs and you were headed in a new line of work, if you were to start a business in something that you don't know, an industry that you're not familiar with, one of the best pieces of advice is to get some mentors, people who have already gone on that same path which you wish to go on. And in spirituality, it's no different. Surround yourself with those who have already walked this path. Are there other mentors that you can follow? Are there other people around you in your circle of friends who are familiar with this? And don't forget that within at least the Sikh tradition, you have an incredible amount of wisdom available to you within the Guru Granth Sahib. There is so much wisdom that is stored within there, and it's been handcrafted and hand-selected to be relevant and to ensure that there's no distortion within that. This wisdom that we're talking about is tens of thousands of years old, but it has been brought together, been put together for us so that we may learn from it. But as I said before, there are variations within that. So you have to figure out what is your version of that works for you. With higher wisdom, you'll speak to different people and they'll give you different answers. So somewhere you have to stop just listening to so many different voices, and then you have to ask yourself, what is actually working for me? What is my actual goal? What am I trying to do here? And once you have clarity with what you're trying to do, then it'll become clear. I gave the answer earlier that if you wanted to lose weight, you go and ask 10 different people and you get 10 different answers. But you first have to identify what is that goal. Once you're clear yourself, what is that goal, then you ask lots of different people, you get all of their advice, and then you try those, and then you figure out which one is right for you. Otherwise, if you're not clear on your own goal, and you're not clear on which way you need to tread, then all the different answers start to conflate with each other. They start to become confusing. So be clear, what do you mean by responding with higher wisdom? What are the changes that you want to see in your life? Then surround yourself with other people who have already done that. For me personally, that means going specifically to the wisdom of Guru Granth Sahib. For me, those are the masters. That's where the wisdom is. That's the wisdom that seems to resonate with me. It may be different for you.
Sat Shri Akal, Satpal Singh ji. Glad to see you in person.
Thank you.
I'll just share a little bit of my journey with you. I think it was during COVID and I saw your video on Hukum. And I think that was the words, whatever you explained or said about the Hukum was so clear. And even now, अगर कुछ अच्छा होता है बुरा होता है सब में आपकी जो आवाज़ हुक्म वाला जो आता है ना वो रहती है मेरे साथ तो हमेशा easy हो जाता है वो get through करना. So I'm glad I'm be here. Thank you to this auntie who actually sent me this कि आप आ रहे हो यहाँ. So thank you. मेरे 3 questions हैं and I'm sorry because usually we don't come across this kind of discussion and you can't ask anyone and randomly. So my first question is about you, your personal. How did you started and what changed your life में जैसे आपको maybe it's your goal or your एक बोलते हैं कि हम क्यों आए इस धरती पे why goal हम ढूंढते हैं maybe this is your spiritual goal. So how did you come across what changed that to spread this kind of wisdom to all over the world, especially this time. It is not hard time, but I think every era was hard in its own way. So that was my first personal question to you. Second question is sometime it's my inner sometime go to Gurdwara or temple तो जो वैसी वाली feeling आती है जब heart एकदम भरा रहता है and then you try to cry but you don't want to cry. I can't express and I can't ask anyone, so I'm so sorry I'm asking you if you can answer that because कहीं पे मुझे उसका जवाब ऐसे नहीं मिलता कि वो क्यों ऐसे होता है. Like एकदम गुरुद्वारे जाते ही मत्था टेकने से पहले ही ऐसे लगता है I'm in a different, I don't know, my heart feels like very heavy and I want to cry but I can't cry because I'm holding on, or sometimes I do cry and then I wipe out. So that's second question. Third question is about my nani, nanu, my ancestors who are already gone. और अगर उनको याद करना चाहिए कि नहीं याद करना चाहिए, वो ड्रीम में आते हैं तो उनका क्या मतलब होता है? I don't know if you can answer that. Sorry. Thank you.
Well, what was the first question, Ji? I'm just joking.
Thank you so much, and thank you for your kind words. I always find it interesting that ever since I started this work, I tried very hard to not make it about me. And a question that comes all the time is, we want to hear your story. And I never published any video or anything about me or my story because it's never been about me. This wisdom stands in its own right. Whoever is giving this wisdom, it's really not about the person or the individual. But for some reason, people are interested in my story. And, sometimes you see these great speakers online, and they always have some huge tragedy story in their life, great transformation from loss to gain and all these things. And I listen to some of them and I think, I don't really have one of those. I don't really have some big, exciting transformation story. So I'll tell you the honest story of where I am from and what has brought me to sit here. I was brought up in a very traditional Punjabi Sikh family. I call it the Sunday Sikhs family. Monday to Saturday, you go to work and you go to school, and on Sunday, you go to the Gurdwara. And my parents brought me up with as much knowledge as they had on this tradition, and they were very particular that I shouldn't lose this. That we come from a lineage, we come from a family, that do what you can to retain this tradition within you and within your life. And so when I was a young child, I remember my mom would be combing my hair and getting me ready for school, and at the same time she'd be teaching me the names of the gurus, she'd be teaching me the Gurbani. You know, we learnt, as a child I learnt not only the names of the gurus, the names of their wives, the names of their children. We were like taught to just memorize these things as much as possible. And so whatever my parents were able to do, they were able to share with me. But it wasn't until I was about 20 years old and I met someone who I now call my first mentor in this, who started to talk to me about the things that you hear me talk about. Oneness, meditation, the ego, hukam. And really, for the first time, I couldn't believe that I was listening to something about the wisdom and not just about the culture or the people or the Sikhs or the history or the traditions. I was hearing something true about the wisdom, and genuinely I couldn't believe that I had gone this many years in my life and I didn't actually know what this wisdom was. And so that created a huge amount of curiosity within me, that do I really know what this is? You know, you go to the Gurdwara, you bow down to the wisdom, you know how all the practices are done, and you go home, but you don't really know what's the real meaning. And so it opened up for me this huge amount of interest. And the second thing that I was taught by this mentor was how to meditate. And that's where things really started to change, because this was no longer now just something that you read in a book. This was something that I was experiencing within myself. And I was finding inner peace, tranquility. I was observing my own mind and noticing, oh, there is an ability for me to watch my thoughts. So I really became fascinated that there is something to learn about you that you yourself don't know. And then the experiences that you gain, you go back into reading the Guru's words and you realize that they're also experiencing and they're talking from that same space. So once I realized that there was a connection between the wisdom and something that we had to do in our own lives and experience for ourselves, then there became a big disconnect between what I was learning and what I was seeing in the Sikh tradition. And I couldn't believe, and I'm still surprised till today, that there is so little being taught about this actual wisdom. There is actually no one who just takes the wisdom and just talks about one Shabad. You still go to the Gurdwara and they tell you the stories, the history, the battles that were fought, but nobody's actually saying, let's take each verse line by line. What does it mean? What does it mean for you in your life? And for me, I was so impacted by this wisdom in my own life, I thought, surely if it's having this impact on me, there are so many other people who are also in the same position as me that don't know what this wisdom is. And as I started to attend various local camps and youth camps and evening classes and things like that, I put myself out there. Hey guys, this is what I'm learning. This is something there. And lots of other people were interested in it. So for me, it's been a slow, gradual change. And it's been something that I've always said that I'm not a teacher. You know, one of the very first times I was lucky enough to be invited abroad, I was invited to Sweden, and we were sitting in a classroom full of yogis who had invited me to explain about Japji Sahib. And in that classroom, I was introduced as, we have a teacher here today. And I first went on the stage and I opened by saying, let me be clear, I'm not a teacher. I am a student. That's what the word Sikh means. I'm learning this wisdom. There is only one teacher, that is the wisdom itself. The Guru itself is the wisdom. I'm just another student like you. I'm learning this and I'm sharing with you what I've learned. I think about it like if you go to a university and you're in the first year and you want to learn, Sometimes you don't get access to the lecturer, so they send some of their more advanced students, and they send them to you and say, go learn from them. So whatever I was learning, I'm just sharing with someone else. And I've always been very clear that I'm just as in the same position as you. I'm learning this, I'm continuing to make mistakes every day, I continue to fall down and not even practice the things that I even talk about, because these aren't easy things. So as much as possible, I've tried to make people aware that I don't want you to follow me. I don't want to have a following against my name, because I may not be here tomorrow. But this wisdom stands true. This wisdom is for everyone. The second question was around? The Gurdwara. Okay. Okay, I got it, yeah. So the second question was around sometimes when you go to the Gurdwara and temples or anything like that, and you're actually starting to feel emotional, and you don't know why. Where are these emotions coming from? Sometimes you may have noticed that if you sit quietly to meditate, all of a sudden you start to get emotional tears start coming out. And this is really just a sign of what's going on inside you. People get quite scared when they sit within themselves and all of these things start coming out. And they don't know where they're coming from because they don't see it in their day-to-day life. But the reality is that when you sit quietly with yourself, all the things that you've pushed down and suppressed are given some breathing space and they come back to the surface. They haven't gone anywhere. And so if there is overwhelming emotion, it isn't something for you to then push down again. It actually is something that you have to spend some time with and ask yourself an honest question, even if I may cry, what is it? What is it that is bubbling under the surface? And you'll find that it's one of two things. Either it is an emotion that you haven't dealt with, a pain, a suffering that you haven't dealt with, something from your past or something every day that you're going through, but you're not actually allowing yourself to deal with it. So there may be someone who's frustrating you, people in your home, in your family, some situation that you're constantly having to face, but you're having to put on a brave face, but underneath there is something going on. Or there's something that happened to you in the past, some trauma, some lost love, something like that, and you haven't really become okay with that, but over time, you've just had to push it away because we all live busy lives. We have to get on with our jobs, we have to serve other members in our family. So you'll find that it's either something to do with that kind of trauma, or you actually have a different kind of trauma when you go to a Gurdwara and you realize that there is a truth here and I'm not living this truth. There's a yearning that everything that I'm doing doesn't feel like it's rewarding me in the same way that I know that this wisdom is going to reward me. And so that's another truth that you learn about yourself, that everything else that I'm doing is a meaningless waste of time. And that's what that emotion is coming from, because there's like something very raw and honest that's coming out and saying, have you really spent your whole life just doing this? So you mustn't be afraid of those emotions. You mustn't push them down. Look at them, watch them. They're a sign. It's a phone call coming. You have to pick it up. You have to answer it. You have to know who's on the other line. And there was a third one?
So ancestors, like sometimes they come in a dream, or sometimes
Yeah.
I learn
Okay.
that we shouldn't be याद नहीं करना चाहिए उनको ऐसे बोलते हैं. Yeah.
So the question is there anything wrong with remembering our ancestors? And if they come up in a dream, does it have some hidden meaning? One of the things I've never really spent much time on is looking at trying to find hidden meanings and signs in things. Sometimes you get people who, they look at everything and everything is a sign for them. Everything has some hidden meaning. And what I've begun to understand with that is that really they're always looking for their own validation. Look, what I was feeling, there's a sign. That little butterfly that went by, oh, that's my grandmother, because one time she told me that she loves butterflies, and I know my grandmother is looking down on me because she came to me in a butterfly today. That's fine, if that's how you want to deal with that. I find that these are quite basic and simple coping mechanisms, but they're not really coping. They're not really effective. So it's not a problem that they come to you. What you should really be asking yourself is there still an attachment within me that hasn't let go of them? Because if one of your loved ones passed away a long time ago, and you're still looking for signs that they're there, they're still talking to you, they're still there in your life, again, that's something that's talking to you and saying, I haven't let go of that. They're not here anymore, yet I'm still trying to make a connection with them. So I'm not a big believer in angels and after death and those sorts of things, that they're coming to you and they're looking over you. Lots of people say, Mom, I know you're looking down on me. Whether she is or she isn't, I don't know. But one thing is clear, you haven't let go. The reality is people in your life will go. That's an absolute fact of life. Whether you're religious, spiritual, or atheist makes no difference. People come and people go. Our attachments is something that this wisdom is constantly asking us to look at and say, have you let go? They've gone, but have you let go? That's something that you have to ask yourself. Okay, thank you.
Hello, Satpal. First of all, I just want to say thank you for coming. Just following on from the session earlier on, I just wanted to understand your thoughts and guidance, I suppose. So if we're not, or if we should not be responding with the ABCD framework, if you like, which is great, and you're trying to see the divine in everyone, which is great, what would you do when you're in a situation, there may be a consortium of people trying to manipulate a situation who are debating as opposed to discussing, and you know full well that they are in a power play for mutual benefit? Do you walk away to protect your own spiritual peace, or do you then call them out for the actions that they're doing, because there will be a negative impact if they get away with it for not just yourself or the greater community? So how do you deal with that? I've been battling with that for 2 years, like letting go versus standing up for justice.
So one of the things that you learn when you come across wisdom is that it gives you the tools, but it leaves the tools in your hands for you to use as you need to. It doesn't provide very hard and fast answers to every nuanced question and every particular scenario in your life. Once you learn how to use these tools, you have all of them available to you. So going back to what you've said, there's only one reason for you to stand up and speak out against something, is if you genuinely believe that there is room for change. Sometimes people want to stand out because they just have to say something. I can't stay quiet anymore. I need to get it off my chest. And the question is really, are you doing it for the greater good, or are you just doing it for a selfish gain because you just feel like I'm right and I need to tell everybody else how wrong they are? So you have to ask yourself, what is it where am I coming from? If I walk away and let them be, and let them do whatever they're going to do, will I be at peace with myself? Can I be at peace not intervening? And maybe you'll be honest with yourself and say, actually, I won't be at peace. I need to make sure that I'm not leaving somebody else vulnerable. I need to make sure that I don't walk away selfishly thinking that I'm going to be okay, fully knowing well that the other person or some other more vulnerable people could be helped. And so that's the question you have to ask yourself is really, is there room for somebody else to benefit from this? And if there is it possible? Because sometimes with the best intentions in the world, you could do everything to try and change the scenario, educate people, talk to people, reason with them, and ultimately they haven't understood. You're not able to make the change that you hoped you could. At that point, are you able to walk away? At that point, are you able to just be at peace with yourself and say, I genuinely tried everything that I could? But these are the kind of things that you're going to have to be able to try and learn, how do I use these tools in my own life? And so unless we're able to look at those situations on a case-by-case basis and actually dissect what they are, it's very difficult to answer. I know how I deal with scenarios in my life. I'm very different to someone like my wife, who's very much just reacting based on how her gut instinct feels like. She's very much intuition-led. For me, I'm the opposite. I will make a list of everything. So in any scenario, I'll write down the pros and the cons. I'll work it out. Even if I don't write it down, I've got it very clear. What is the effort for this versus the reward? I do the same with my colleagues at work. Whenever they say, hey, I've got a new idea, we should start this new project, I say, what is the effort and what is the reward? Does the reward outweigh the effort? And once I've started to educate my own team at work, they begin to start to see this is how you deal with projects. This is how you deal with scenarios. Is the amount of effort that you're going to put in, is it actually going to bring the reward that you expect? Because sometimes they think it's a great idea to do a project and they know it's going to be a lot of effort, but they don't actually know whether it's going to work or not. I said, why would you put the effort in? Why would you put the effort in if you have no idea? Be more calculated. But then that's my approach. I'm a bit more sort of analytical and calculated. My wife, on the other hand, can't stand all the lists that I have for everything. I have a list for every tiny little thing in our house. For her, she just goes by her heart. What is my heart saying? Right here, right now, whether it technically makes sense or not, I have to respond based on what my heart is telling me. And most of the time, she's right.
I think she's watching this video, that's why he said that. All right, if I can just quickly go through a question on one of the members who sent it, and then we'll come to you, sir. So there's a question, Satpalji. It says, you said when we have an argument with someone or fight, we always think we are right, which is correct. But after this argument is done and dusted, we feel guilty that it was all our fault, how to get over my own demons, that even if it was my fault, it's okay to let it go. There is a stage where I feel everything I say or do is always incorrect and wrong, and it's giving me anxiety. So I guess the question is, how do I deal with it, the anxiety?
When you find that you are always feeling wrong, there is something quite deep and profound that has happened to you. There has been years of suppression, years of emotion that has been pressed down further and further, people in your life who have not allowed you to blossom, people who have not allowed you to feel confident in your own decision-making processes. So you get to a point where you second-guess yourself. You don't know what is right. You don't know what is wrong. You don't have the confidence in your own self. And so you have to ask yourself, what is going on? How come I'm not able to make a simple decision? On the other hand, there are some people who can never make their minds up about anything. And every decision leads to anxiety. Everything needs to be overthought and overanalyzed again and again and again. And no matter what answer you pick, you don't know whether that's the right one because the other one seems just as right. And so what I've seen and I've noticed in some people is as much as they say they don't want to be that kind of person, that is the only type of person that they've been for such a long time that they've actually become comfortable with this constant conflict within their own minds. The truth is, sometimes the negative emotions that we experience is all that we know, and it becomes a comfortable place. And we're not able to move away from that. We're not able to move into a place of peace. The conflict is all that we know. And so at some point when it comes to making decisions, you have to have a sense of surrender. You have to have a sense of making one choice and then allowing the universe to do whatever it needs to do with that choice. Whether it's the right choice or not, at some point you have to let go. And really what some of this comes down to is being overly controlling. You want to control the entire universe. You want to control every scenario. And sometimes when you're so much in that controlling mode, you can't actually make a decision, because you know as soon as you have to make a decision, you have to let go of that control, and that actually has to manifest itself. And you don't want to control. You don't want to lose that control. A question that has become one of the most powerful questions for me in my own life when I find that I'm in a state of conflict, when I'm in a state of distress, I ask myself a very simple question. I say, Satpal, are you enjoying this right now? And every single time that has allowed me to drop all the conflict that's going on in my mind. Very simple question. Are you enjoying this conflict, this toing and froing? If you've argued with someone else and you just constantly keeping it going, sometimes we create arguments in our own minds because we should have said something and we didn't say it. Notice distress within you and then ask yourself, are you enjoying your suffering? You want to keep it going? Because nobody else is making you suffer. You yourself are making yourself suffer. But you're only going to be able to ask that question if you know what suffering is. A lot of people don't know that that is suffering. They just know that that's their reality. This is why I'm so adamant that we must practice our own inner peace. We have to learn, how do we switch this inner peace on? How do I tap back into that? When you know what inner peace is, then you will know what your suffering is. Let me make it clearer. When you know what floating is, then you know what drowning is. Most of us are drowning without even knowing what floating is. You have to learn to rise up to the top. And you have to be comfortable up there in the floating. Within the Sikh tradition, there's one of the most beautiful analogies that says this wisdom is a boat that carries you across the ocean of life. What does that mean? Most people are drowning. And we don't know that we're drowning. We're just constantly there. The answer is, can you find stillness? Can you be okay with stillness? Can you go back within your own self and be there and be okay? Knowing that you cannot control everything. Knowing that the universe and the world is chaotic. Knowing that every decision you make will probably not turn out the way you think it's going to turn out. The world is chaotic. The mind is chaotic. But you do have access to something that is peace. And that peace is the essence of you and is the essence of the entire universe. There is peace in every single one of us. We just have to be willing to let go of our traumas and let go of our chaos. And you only know that when you begin to recognize those ways of thinking as a suffering. Because for most people, that's not suffering, that's just decision making. That's important. No, I'm right. I have to do this. I have to stay here. I'm the one that can make this decision. Only me. Carry on then. Once you realize that it's suffering, that's the only moment you're going to be willing to let it go.
Yeah, sorry if I sound repetitive, but I just wanted to add to the question that was asked earlier. So you said you should respond with higher wisdom and not react. Completely understand this. The question I wanted to ask was, especially in the workplace settings, like the gentleman said, when people around are pushing their points, you don't want to react, but if you don't react at that moment in time, especially in workplace settings, people get over you and yeah, you don't have a second chance. And then sometimes, yes, you have to react. And most of the time, afterwards, I feel I've reacted rather than responding, but there was no other choice. In personal spaces, however, I'm not afraid of losing to my family or my friends or anything, so I don't need to react. But sometimes then the other person in personal setting feels that you are not engaging. So at both workplace and in personal spaces, you want to do something, but yeah, you're not trying to, you're not getting what you want. So what's a better way to react or respond in these settings?
And I think similar to the way that we talked about it before, you do need to look at your own motivations and whether the reaction is going to have an outcome whether you can actually make a change outside. So in the workplace scenario, sometimes you have to stand up for what you believe is right. And you have to be able to balance that because you don't want to come across as too strong because then you may have a falling out with your colleagues. Sometimes it'll have an impact on your job. So you have to make these kind of decisions. There isn't a one right or wrong answer. It really is something that you have to be comfortable with the chaos of life. There is going to be times when you have to stand up and it may not work out, but you did the best that you could. And then you go in your own homes, but because there in the home, the scenario is different. You know that you're not going to be fired from your family. So you can react in a completely different way. And it's finding that balance. Because, you know, sometimes I do the same when I'm in a work setting. I have to make all the decisions and people come and ask me, what's the next thing? What's the next thing? And I'm so busy with that and making decisions at work, I actually go home and I say, I don't need to make this decision. I'm happy with whatever decision you're going to make. And that's not the same as them coming to you and saying, I will make the decision, but I'd like to know your opinion. I'd like to know how you would deal with this. So it's that balance between, okay, I'll give you my advice, and then you make the decision however you want. I'm reminded of my youngest son. He comes and does this to me every day. He said, Dad, what color shirt should I wear today? Blue or white? I said, okay, yeah, I think you should look at the weather outside and look at what else he's wearing. He said, I always say, I think you should wear the blue one. He said, okay, I'll wear the white one. Every day, without fail, he does that, to the point at which it's become a joke. And I always have to question, why did you ask me? Surely you knew the answer. And sometimes he doesn't know the answer until he hears the other person's answer. He's not able to make the decision. So he hears you say blue. He said, good, I knew I wanted the white one. And I then play with him, and I say, wear blue. He said, okay, I'll wear white. I said, great, because that's the one I wanted. So I play with him back, and then he doesn't know, did he want me to wear the blue or did he want me to wear the white? So we have this sort of toing and froing. But the point is, sometimes people just need to hear your side of things. Even if you're not going to be actively involved, you know, in both scenarios, within the work and within the home, really you're a team. That's a good way to look at it. You're a team. And it's whether you're involved with that or not, when together as a team, you make a good decision, the entire team succeeds. So even if you're not the one scoring the goal, as a team, when your team scores, your entire team gets lifted up. So you have to do whatever you can to help that. And if that means stepping in and making a decision, sometimes you have to. If that means just guiding them, sometimes you have to. If not, sometimes you let go and you just let them score. These are the things this is the practicalities of everyday life that we have to look at. Yeah.
Thank you for your time today. My question is about ambition. So one of the things you started talking about right at the start was focusing on inner peace. I find striving for ambition in the workplace doesn't always sit well with inner peace, and you may have to sacrifice one or the other in order to achieve more, do more, get more, strive for more? Any skills? Thank you.
It's very interesting. The question is around ambition. And sometimes ambition doesn't sit well with inner peace. You have to compromise on one or the other. Which one should it be? It's very interesting that as a society we've been brought up with certain goals and values, and we give them terms like ambition, success, being motivated. And yet the same things the spiritual masters called obsessions, insanities, diseases, egos. So the language you use is very important, because you may convince yourself that you're doing something valuable and good, even though it doesn't sit right with you. But because the entire society is saying, good, go get that promotion, do the next thing, and the next thing, and the next thing. And so you're surrounded with all of these kind of positive affirmations, and the whole world is pushing you. Yes, you should get more and more and more. The question you have to ask yourself is, for what? Maybe you should get that promotion so that you can get a better salary and you can look after your family better. What is the underlying goal? What is your underlying goal? Sometimes we're trying to do so much and achieve so many things, and at the back of our mind we think, when I get all of these things, I'm going to be peaceful. That's when I can let go. When I'm the CEO of the company and I've got lots of people working underneath me, then I can let go. Until then, I can't let go. Depending on what stage you're in your life. We've all been there. When you're starting out in your career, yes, you have to carry on. But then when you're in that stage, maybe you have more energy to do those things. When you get married and you have children, then you might say, actually, that's where my focus is now. My focus is to spend more time with them. One of the most hurtful things that can happen to you is when your child says, you don't want to spend any time with us. You're always busy. And in the back of your mind, you're thinking, I'm doing all of that busy stuff for you. But the child is saying, I don't need you to do all those things. I just need you to be with me. So you really have to ask yourself, well, why do I want to be more ambitious? And that's where it becomes sometimes quite difficult, because sometimes you're doing it because you've been just fed certain ideas about what life should be like. Everyone is supposed to be driving fancy cars, and we're all supposed to live in big mansions, and we're all supposed to have lots of money and the perfect family life and lots of disposable income so that we can spend it on holidays and nice things. What is it for you? Does that sit comfortably with you? Maybe it does. I know many people who listen to this spiritual wisdom and they say, this is not for me. I'm really happy with I'm a career-oriented person. This is all I need to do. I'm just going to spend all my time. They work 70, 80 hours a week. Fine. But there are other people who have tried that, and they come and they listen to this wisdom and they say, I've done all of those things and I'm miserable. They're coming from a different motivation. You'll notice in the answers, the question comes back to you. Do you know yourself? Do you know what you want? Do you know what's going on inside you? Once you know what's going on inside you, you will know how to respond. That's what it means to respond with higher wisdom. You have to go in and actually get that higher wisdom. You actually have to go in and dig deep and find out, what do you really want? What are you really striving for? And don't judge the answer. If you're young and unmarried, you might say, actually, I really want to have a partner in my life. I really want to feel settled. I want to get a good job so that I can feel like I'm in a good place. Financially, I'm in a good place. I want to have a nice house. I want to have a family life. That's fine. Go for it. But at what point do you stop? You have to keep going back and asking yourself. And this is where I compare it to any other project that you're going to do. You don't start any project until you know what it is that you're trying to achieve. And yet, we start the journey of life having no idea what we want to achieve. Or we borrow other people's, oh, what are you doing with your life? Or you're going to be a medic? Okay, I'll become a medic as well. Or your cousins are doing this, and your family members and your aunts and uncles are saying, oh, look how else everyone else in your family is doing. You should do the same thing. You should start your own business. You do this, you do that. Are we borrowing everybody else's goals before we start the project of our life? Or are we going to at least for some time take a step back and have a look? What is the goal? What am I trying to do? What is my life about? And that's the answer that only you can give.
Hi, Satpalji. Good to see you in person. My question is around working with groups, specifically who are going through addiction from substances or behaviors of various kinds, as well as mental health, clinical diagnoses and things like that. And working with not just those groups or the people going through them, but also with the counsellors that may be working with them as well as people who might be suffering from domestic and relationship issues at home. So in those kind of crisis cases and things like that, I guess, you said it earlier, it was really beautiful, that is there a particular shabad in Gurbani or some wisdom that the Guru's enacted or things like that to show us a model of dealing with that? And if you could share that here, that'd be good.
There's an entire lecture that I have online called How to Deal with Habits and Addictions. And it's actually a very big subject. It's a very complicated subject. And there isn't just a single one-size-fits-all solution. I'm also not of the belief that you just have to restrict yourself to one type of answer. There are many people and institutions who are dealing with coming up with solutions like this. And I know many people who've gone through something like the 12 Steps program and have come out the other end and said, this is phenomenal. We should integrate it into more spiritual traditions because there's a spiritual aspect to that, as you know. Surrendering to a higher power, for example. So there are many people who are trying to help with this. The one thing that I've learned about addictions is that most people are unaware that they actually like their addictions. And that's a difficult thing to hear for people. Ultimately, the reason you're addicted to something is because it's more rewarding for you than it is painful. And when people try to help someone with addictions, they don't actually realize that that person is being rewarded chemically in their brain, emotionally in their heart. They're being rewarded by that. And so they have to learn to see that what you are doing is actually more harmful than rewarding. And until that switch happens in their own mind, they will not be able to help themselves. They have to come to a point of realization where what I am doing is more harmful than it is rewarding. And as long as it is more rewarding, whether they can logically understand it or not, it is something that's going on deeper within them. And so this is where whatever you're doing, ultimately it is something, and you know this very well, certainly with people dealing with addictions, it is ultimately a point at which they have to reach where they are ready to give up. Because at that point, the problem with it has become so real and they've realized, and sometimes it's the hardest things for people who are dealing with addictions is that they themselves don't see the harm that it's causing their life and the harm that's causing their family until it's too late. All of a sudden, they've gone way too far. And then it's created so much chaos, their family members have left, or they've done something in such a way that they said, I can't undo that. And that's been that wake-up call. But really, until that wake-up call happens, addiction is one of the most painful things to watch someone else going through, because there's very little you can do until they realize that it's more pain than good.
Have you found that spiritual teachings are great to learn, but not always easy to apply to your own life? Sometimes we all need a bit of support and guidance from people who know what we're going through and can help us find some answers. The Nanak Naam Facebook group helps you do just that. It's an online community where you can ask any questions about life and get answers from other members of the group. Search for Nanak Naam Community Support and join our free Facebook group today.
Hello. It's lovely seeing you in person. I just wanted to ask, I'm struggling to completely surrender, and I wanted to understand how you went about it, and then if there's any practical steps that I could take that could help me, and if there's a story you could share on that, like completely surrendering.
So the question is, how do you surrender? And if I personally have any stories that I can share about surrender, I will tell you that is certainly one part of my life that is still a work in progress. One of the most frustrating things that somebody can tell you is just let the universe do what it's going to do. And especially for someone like me who's a little bit more analytical, my background is in project management and IT, and I'm very methodical in how I work. I want to calculate and plan everything. And I can't let something go and just say, well, let it just happen. So for me, surrendering doesn't mean don't put effort. That's how I've made my peace with it. I know I'm not the kind of person that just says, like, we need to do an event, it'll just happen. And I'm like, no, an event like this doesn't just happen. There's an entire team, there's many calls, there's many meetings that have to happen. But we're happy with it at the end because all the things that have had to happen and all the effort that's gone into it has meant that there's no nasty surprises on the day. There are some people that are happy with the nasty surprises because they don't have to do all the effort to go in. I've made my peace with the fact that I need to put effort in. That's my thing. But I'm also very clear that after all the effort that you put in, you have to surrender to the idea that sometimes things can just happen. And you don't then beat yourself up about it, that why didn't I plan for every single scenario? Why didn't I know that was going to happen? I should have planned for that as well. So for me, surrender is almost like a teamwork between me and the universe. I have to do my bit, but then I have to be willing to let go and allow the universe to do what the universe is going to do. Anyone who's studied the Bhagavad Gita will tell you that that is the ultimate message of the Bhagavad Gita. So this is a 1,000-year-old problem. This problem has been going on from the beginning of time. And in the Bhagavad Gita example, it is a conversation between Lord Krishna and Arjuna. And Arjuna says, how do I fight this battle? He's about to start a battle. And the people on the other side of the battlefield are also his family members, people he grew up with, people he learned from, people who he values and he respects. And the scenario has happened in such a way that now he's standing on this side of the battlefield and the people on the other side are ready to start a war with him. And so he asks Lord Krishna, how do I fight this battle? How do I do it? And Lord Krishna's answer is, you must do what you need to do and then surrender to what is going to happen. You put your effort in, but you do not control the outcome. Control the inputs and let the outputs be what they're going to be. Do whatever you can. And so that's how I've had to surrender to the fact that I need to do my effort, but I can never control the outcome. And we just take a scenario like putting this event on today. Anything could have happened. But lots of things are happening because they were controlled, because they were planned, because they were exercised. We got the teams involved. We had meetings together. So you have to be willing to let go of some of the things that aren't in your control. That's a great question. Thank you.
So one of the questions that's come in is, what is more important, to be thyself or know thyself? Do you think they are different?
So the question is, what is more important, to be yourself or to know yourself? When in order to be yourself, you have to know what yourself is to be. But there is a problem with both of these. Within the tradition of Guru Nanak's wisdom, you neither need to be yourself nor know yourself. You have to be willing to let go of yourself. And in order to let go of yourself, first you have to know what it is that you are. There is the most profound understanding of the self within the teachings of Guru Nanak. And the wisdom says, Haume dirag rog hai, daru bhi ismai. He says, within each and every one of you, there is something called I am. And your I amness is your biggest disease. But he says, the medicine is in knowing the I am. You all have the disease, but once you know what the disease is, that is the starting point of the solution. So you are not to be yourself. We're all being ourselves, and it hasn't helped us. We've been doing it our whole life. If you're not being yourself, who have you been? We've all been ourselves. We're all trying to do what we think is right. But the higher wisdom is teaching you, you are not what you think you are. And who you think you are has made you miserable. You are not this. And this is where it starts to become that deeper spiritual philosophical question of who am I? And every spiritual tradition ultimately ends with this one major question, who am I? And most people are willing to be religious, but are not willing to ask this question. Most people are willing to be spiritual, but are not willing to ask themselves this question. Most people who fit in neither of those categories and want to call themselves agnostic or atheists are still not willing to confront who am I? That is the ultimate question. What are you? Who are you? And until that starts to become a burning question within you, what is this? Where did this come from? Who is this? We don't ask those questions. We don't want to ask those questions. For us, for some people, there's no question. I know who I am. I am me. Fine, that's who you are. For those of you who are familiar with the evening verses that are read within the tradition of Guru Nanak, it starts with Dukh Daru. It says, within you, there has to be a disturbance. And once you get that disturbance, that starts to become a medicine for you. Because until that disturbance happens, you don't know how to move forward. Most people around the world are not disturbed by themselves in any way. It is only people who cut together in spiritual groups like this. We're all the disturbed ones. We've all realized that out there is a happiness that everybody else is chasing and they seem to be happy with it. But we're disturbed by it. There's something more. This is not who we really are. There's something more. Something is missing. I've tried all that. I've been there. It doesn't make sense. There must be something higher. There must be something more. So we are the disturbed ones. But that's a good type of disturbance. Because there are a lot of people out there who are suffering in the world and they don't even know it. They don't even know why they're suffering. There are a lot of people who are suffering, they don't know that they themselves are suffering. They're just living in the rat race of life. So count your blessings that you have the blessing to be disturbed by your own life. Use that and then go in, ask, what's going on? Write it down, do whatever it takes within that makes sense to you to ask yourself, what's going on? This is very practical. This is very logical. Simply ask yourself, what is going on? What do I want? Have I done all the things that I think is right for me? Is there something deeper? Is there a deeper meaning in my life? That is how you know yourself. Do you really know what you are? I'm not trying to give you some very high, difficult philosophy. That's the problem, that sometimes spiritual wisdom becomes so philosophical, it sounds good, but you can't break it down. I say write it down. Just make a list. Just write it down. Ask yourself these questions. Okay, what's going on? Am I happy with my day? Am I happy with my year? But you've got to ask further questions. Sometimes we just say, what do I want in life? Well, by this time next year, I want to have a raise, I want to have that promotion, I want to upgrade my car, I want to do this, I want to do that. No, ask more deeper questions. Why? Once you get all those, then what? That's where you have to start pushing yourself. Move a little bit out of your comfort zone, but you're already doing that. You're already in that questioning mode. Move a little bit out of your comfort zone and don't just follow the crowd that they get an upgrade to their car, so you have to get an upgrade to yours. Ask yourself, once I do, then what? Once I get that relationship, then what? Once I get that job, once I move out of my small home into my bigger home, then what? What are you looking for underneath all of that stuff? And that's an answer that you will have to then ask for yourself. Know yourself. The ultimate question that the spiritual masters have asked is not what do I want, they're saying who am I that is doing the asking. And they've gone very deep within themselves and they've come up with a phenomenal understanding. They said, I am not here. I cannot even go within myself and find me. When I go within myself and try and find the me, I can find that there is something deeper, deeper, deeper. There is something sitting within me that doesn't seem to have a start and an end. It wasn't born when I was born, it was always there. It is constant, it is conscious, and it is content. Sat, Chit, Anand. That is the highest wisdom that has come from these masters. There is something deeper within me. And then what has come out of their mouth is all of this wisdom. When you look within the Sikh tradition, you look at the Mool Mantra, you think it's a description of God. It is not a description of God. It is a description of what Guru Nanak found when he went and sat under the river for 3 days and he realized who he really was. What came out was, this is not me. There is a oneness here. It is eternal. It is definitely true. There is something within me that never experiences fear, never experiences hatred, never experiences birth and death. Those are the big questions. Just ask yourself first, who am I? What do I want? What's really going on? Start to ask the emotion behind why you do things, not just what goal do I want to achieve next.
Hello, Satpal. I'm glad to know I'm one of the disturbed ones, and I've been that way as a child, but I want to understand, because you've hinted around kind of answering my question, what is the purpose? Why are we here? Why are we all here? Not this room, but like this lifetime. What are we here for? I understand as Sikhi, my parents explained it's, to be a good Sikh, a humane person, and to help others to be humane. But I want to, like that lady said, you go to Gurdwara, you feel heavy, and you feel like what you're doing doesn't resonate with what you're praying with. We're on a rat race. I sometimes have a unnerving energy, like a surge of energy, like I should be on some warrior field fighting a battle. And I'm like that most of the time, and I cannot relate or resonate with most people. So I need to understand what is the purpose here, because I feel there's something bigger I need to be doing than, making babies, raising a family, teaching them Sikhi, helping the community. But I feel like there's something, it's huge, but I can't explain it.
That's a very important question that you're beginning to ask about yourself. I won't answer the question around what is the general purpose of a human being, because you've hinted on something very important. I feel like I should be doing something more. I have my family, I have my home, I have the standard life, but there's so many things that are out there. I would ask you to ask yourself this question: am I trying to save the world? Am I trying to get to a point where everything is okay on the outside? I've come across people who are these warriors. They want to do something good. They always feel like there are so many problems that need to be solved, and that's amazing, because you're feeling the pain of other people and you want to go out and you want to relieve that pain. But make sure you've relieved your own pain first. And sometimes if you're not, you are basically running away from an actual pain inside. There's a disturbance within you that you don't want to deal with. And so you feel like, I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to help the environment, and then I'm going to go work with these impoverished kids somewhere, and then I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to do that, and then I'm going to go build a school, and then I'm going to go deal with world peace. All those things. Great. Look, there's a lot of problems in the world. And I'm not saying don't go and don't be a part of the change, because otherwise what are you going to do? Sit back and just watch the world fall apart? But know if you're coming from the right place first. First, fix yourself. We used this analogy earlier on that when you're on a plane and the oxygen mask comes down, first put your own mask on before you try to help others. Because if you yourself are not coming from a good place, anything that you do to help other people will ultimately not satisfy you deep down. All that you will happen, even if you do a lot of help for other people, all that will happen is you will just see more problems after another after another. The world is full of problems. You're always going to be able to find somebody or something else that needs to be changed. But what's going on deep within you first? And it's not a question of one or the other. You can do both. You can go and help those things, but you've really hinted on something here, which is, I feel agitated first. I feel like somebody who is restless and I can't quite settle myself down. And you've taken that understanding of yourself and you've projected it outwards. I'm restless, and you've said, I'm restless because of this, this, and this. No, that's not why you're restless. You're restless, and you need to first look at that. Can I find a place of rest? Once you find a place of rest, you'll find that there's something else that lives there, and that's called compassion. And from that compassion, you'll be able to go out there and help the world. Right now, you're coming from a place of distress, and you want to go out and heal the world. Heal yourself first, and within that, I promise you, you won't find laziness. You'll find compassion and love for everything else. And with that, the impact that you will have on the rest of the world will be so profound. Because you're full. You've filled your own cup first. Once you've filled your own cup, you will be able to fill others.
Sat Sri Akal, Satpal ji. My question is a little bit different, but I have to ask you, because I've been struggling with this question for some time now. I have been listening to you for years now, and I have learned a lot from your YouTube lessons. And the second lesson on Mool Mantra, I thought it was exquisite. It was explained very nicely, although it took me a couple of years to just get it right. But my question is, the concept of oneness, and I have tried it hundreds of times to read your first lesson, but I just don't get it. I'll be very pleased if you can elaborate on that so I can get something here about the oneness. And the extension of that question is also the equation 1 + 1. Thank you.
Thank you. Your question is around oneness. I would want to know, what is it that you've heard so far that hasn't? Sorry? I would like to know, what have you heard so far about oneness that you haven't understood or you haven't resonated with? Because otherwise I'm in danger of giving the same answers that you've already heard before.
Yeah, because what I see in this world is everything is duality. Everything is in pairs, day, night, female, male. And this oneness, I just can't grasp it. I don't know why it's so difficult.
So the question is really, everything is in duality. Hot and cold, up and down, old and young. So if everything works in twos, and we can see the duality of everything else, where is this oneness? And how come we can't see the oneness? All we can see is the duality, male and female, old and young. The idea of oneness is that underneath everything, there is one thing from which we all come from. And the easiest way that I have begun to understand it is as though there are many waves all from the same ocean. So when you look at yourself in the mirror and then you look at another person, you say, that is another person, that is not me. I am here, they are over there. There is no oneness. I am female, you are male. We are different. So you're not looking at the things in the reality. What you're looking at is just the very superficial layer, which is like the waves of the ocean. You're able to see the waves. You're saying one wave is here and one wave is there. But when you take a step back and you look at it, you realize that there is no such thing as a wave without the ocean. Can you have a wave without the ocean? You can't. So the question is not what you can see. The question is, where does it come from? Where does the wave come from? It comes up from the ocean, it goes back into the ocean. So don't look at one person and another person. Ask them, where do they come from?
That is ocean. And the waves are this part of the ocean, the water. But here we are different. Male, female, everything.
Yes.
And I just can't get that right.
Yes.
If we were of the same, like, or everything was the same, I would understand it. But we are different from the ocean, which the waves are the same as the ocean, water.
Yes.
But we are not that way. We are different.
Okay. So when we talk about a concept like God, the very first lecture that I ever published when I first started the YouTube channel was this lecture called What is God? And that is because it is the ultimate question that you're asking. What is it? What is this one thing that connects all of us together? And the easiest way that I can explain that is to ask you to change this word oneness, ask you to change this word God. Are you and me part of the same universe?
That's what we are, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Have you and me been born out of the same universe?
We are species. You know, we are different species. We are not just one type of thing like water.
No,
Water
I understand.
is one.
I understand. On the surface
we
level,
are different species.
we look different.
Yeah.
We are different.
Yeah.
But there is something underneath all of us that is the same.
Yeah. Yeah.
That is what oneness is. That, yes, we are different. An apple is not an orange. I understand that.
Yeah.
But underneath it, at the very base level, ultimately we all come from the same place, and ultimately we all go back to the same place.
Yeah.
So there is something that we all share. You're breathing the same oxygen as me. There is something inside me that is the same as you.
Yeah.
There is the same life energy in me that there is the same life energy in you. Now, I'm not saying that I am the same as you. You and me are different. But there is no denying that at the base level, underneath all of it all, we are all sharing the same space.
Yes.
So one wave is different to another wave, but underneath them, they're coming from the same thing. So yes, an elephant is different to a giraffe, but they all come from the same thing, and they all, when they die, go back into the same thing. They all come from the same universe. They all go back into it. We're all born out of this earth. We're all going to go back into this earth. We're all breathing the same air. So while we all have things that are different, it starts to help by not looking at the differences and start to looking at what is the underneath thing that is the same as all of us. You know, in Shakespeare, they said that you and me are the same. If you cut yourself or if I cut myself, we both bleed the same red blood. There is something underneath that the same. There is something that unites all of us. So that is what that oneness is. And even though on the surface we may look different, underneath it there is something that unites all of us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, thanks so much for hosting this. So I've come across you from your Instagram reels, and I think what you're doing is really important. I think being able to share the wisdom of what you're learning in terms of religion is really difficult, and I find that it's really helpful. So thank you for all your efforts in that. I've got a question. So I've noticed for myself, whenever I'm looking to move forward and I'm moving towards the next stage in life, that when I get to the next stage, for me, I always feel like it to be really challenging, and all my thoughts and negativity comes and tests me, where at that moment I have an option of moving through or letting the past negative self to hold me back. When going through this change, what strategies could you suggest to help you move forward and not to be held back from what's held you back before?
That's a very important question. And the question is that when I'm moving forward in life, I find that when I reach a new stage, that I'm faced with challenges. I've never faced these situations before. And then uncertainty comes in. I'm not sure whether I'm equipped with the tools, because this is a new scenario. So fear kicks in, uncertainty kicks in, and then sometimes it can cripple you that you don't actually want to go any further. It's safer to stay where you are. So how do I move forward with this? I'll be honest with you. There's a word that I associated with myself for most of my life, and the word was failure. In my mind, I'm a failure. And I always assumed that I was a failure, and everything that I focused on was that I used to say to myself that I'm the kind of person who I can never stick to one thing. Everything I start, I eventually drop. I've never succeeded anything. And this thing just never went. I had this belief within myself that you are a failure, that's what you do. Until one day I actually sat down and I started asking myself, is this always true? Or am I just focusing on the things in my life that I believe I have failed at? Is it true that I have never stuck to anything? And then I started listing all the things that I have actually completed. And I was like, there are so many things that I've completed in my life. And I had to almost take a step back and say, oh wow, I've been carrying this baggage of this word called failure, which had stopped me from taking on other projects, which had stopped me from doing anything, having the courage to go forward, because I was like, I can't go forward with that. I am already a failure. I know I can't. And I genuinely had to take a step back and say, oh, there are so many things that I haven't failed in life, that eventually I had to be willing to let go of that label and say, I need the confidence to say I'm no longer a failure. And that was a big shift for me. And this wasn't that long ago. After you've known me, after you've known the work that I've achieved, in my head I still saw myself as a failure. And I had to have the bravery to let go of this comfortable label that I put on myself that I'm a failure. And only then could I actually have the confidence to say, maybe I will try new things. And it doesn't mean I've become so overconfident that I'll just try anything. I'm probably more cautious rather than labeling myself as a failure. But sometimes we actually have to take a step back and not just look at the small definition that we've put ourselves in. Sometimes we put ourselves in a box and we get comfortable in that box and we think that's who we are. Maybe it's not even something that you did. Maybe when you were growing up, somebody else just kept telling you you're a failure. You're never good at anything. You're never going to complete anything. Look at your older brother and your sister. They're always doing things better than you. Maybe somebody put you in that box. Take a step, take some time to look and actually say, what are the words that I associate with myself? What are these negative terms? I never finish whatever I start. I never do this. I never do that. I always do this. Have a look at those words and then look at, is that statement always true? And if it's not, are you willing to let go of those statements? And it's freeing on one side, but on the other side, it's actually a little bit nerve-wracking. You think, oh, I thought I knew myself, but I actually don't. So now I'm going forward without even knowing whether I can do it or not. But I'm going with the confidence that I've actually been able to show myself that there are things that I've done right. So when you go to a new situation in life, don't focus on the fact that this is new, I don't know what to do, I've never done it. Look at what were other times in my life that I had something new, and did I complete it? If I did, I have the confidence to know that I may or may not succeed in this, but I at least have the confidence to go forward with it.
One of the questions is, who bows to him? When I say I bow to him, according to Sikhism, what is the definition of I?
It's a big question. So we started today with a mantra, I bow to you. And the question is, who is bowing to who? One of the things that we have to be careful of is not learning spiritual jargon and spiritual words that we become so comfortable with speaking it that it becomes something that is second nature to us, that we can say it, but it isn't a truth for us. And especially ones that read wisdom around non-duality, they become very good at saying things like, oh, there is no me, there is only one, I don't exist, you and I are an illusion, all those sorts of things. But is that your reality? Do you know it? Have you done the inner work to go in and actually see whether you exist or not? Otherwise, it becomes something that you can quite confidently speak to other people about. So in order to answer this question, who are you? That isn't a question that you can write down words to an answer to. You can't start a page that said, who am I, and start writing all those things down. That's not what is meant by the question, who am I? The question, maybe to help you break it down, is you have to actually go and look within yourself. Spend some time literally with your eyes closed and looking at yourself and saying, where am I? And maybe a simple way to think about it is, if you were to lose one of your arms, are you still here? What would you say? If you lose your arm, are you still here? Yes, you are still here. If you lose the other arm, are you still here? If you lose both your legs, are you still here? And you keep going and you keep going and you keep going. You say, okay, if I lose this arm and I lose this arm and I lose this, and maybe, I don't know how I'm still surviving, but if I'm still here and I've lost everything and I can still say I am here, what is me then? This is the work that you do sitting within yourself. This is why this is not easy. What is it that's here? What is it that can still say, I am here? And then you begin to realize the I is not this body. So that's your first realization. I am not my body, because I can lose certain parts of my body and I can still be here. So I am not my body. Then you go deeper within yourself. Okay, what is in here? Well, there are thoughts. Okay, now I've thought about a sandwich, now I've thought about a holiday, now I've thought about this, now I've thought about that. Can I think lots of thoughts? Yes, I can. Do I have times where I don't have thoughts? Yes. So, can I look at my thoughts? Yes, I can look at my thoughts. Can I hear myself talking in my own mind? Yes, I can. So who is that? I'm not the thought, I'm not the body, and I'm not my mind, and there's still something here. And then you go even deeper. Okay, I am not my thoughts, I am not my mind. Is there still some part that is me? And I hope I'm not losing some of you, but this is some of the work that I've done within myself. I would love to just sit in meditation and just go deeper and deeper and deeper. And the way that I would do it, and the meditation that I would do, I would share with you, is I would simply close my eyes and I would just watch what comes to me now. What is the thought that comes to me now? And I would, whatever the thought was, whatever my attention goes to with my eyes closed, I thought, okay, I'm just going to let that thought go and I'm just going to go to it. Like I would imagine myself going darker and darker and darker down this deep hole. A thought has come, I'm going to let it go deeper. And let it go deeper. Now I'm thinking about my body. Okay, I've forgotten about my body. Go deeper, go deeper, go deeper. And eventually I got to the bottom, where there was nothing more to think about. There was no other part that I could identify with. And the only thing that I could conclude was, what is still here? And I said, I am still here. And then I was, okay, now I'm getting somewhere. There is something here. I'm not my body. I'm not this. I'm not my thoughts. I'm not the past memories. I'm not the traumas of this. I'm not my future aspirations. But something is here called me. And then I went even deeper. What is this me? What is it if it's nothing else? Is it just a thought? No, it's not a thought. There is just, I am here. And it has no qualities to it. It's just here. And then you see, has this feeling of I am always been here? And you say, yes, you know what? Lots of things have changed in my life. From the day that I was born, right back to my earliest memories, so many things have changed. I used to be a small child in school, and then we used to live here, and then we moved to this house, and I used to have a tiny little body, and we did this, and I used to play with other children, and all of those things have changed. Nothing has stayed the same. But there was something that was consistent. I am. Say, okay, there's something in me that is consistently there from the moment I'm born, probably till the moment I die, this thing that I am. But I don't have any more way to define it. Does it even have a name? He said, no, it doesn't really have a name, because a name is a very superficial thing. So all I realized was there is something, and the big realization that came to me was, well, if there's just something here and I can't give it any qualities, why am I calling it me? And that's when the penny dropped. There is something here, and my mind has just labeled it me. And once it labeled it me, it added lots of other things. This is your body, this is your family, this is your background, these are your aspirations, this is your hobbies, these are your likes, your dislikes. It was all sitting on something that I had mislabeled me. And I was like, is that an accurate representation of what is here? And then when I realized, no, that's not an accurate label. And the only conclusion I could come to was, it has no name. There is just something here. And the easiest way that I could define it was, I called it, it is alive. Something is alive. It's undeniable that it's here and it's alive. So that's the work that I'm being very candid and open with you, that I just did within myself. And when I say the work that I did with myself, I would sit on the train going to work. And I knew I had an hour, and as long as I could get a seat on the train, I would close my eyes, and everybody else would be on their phones or reading newspapers or listening to music. I would just sit. Who is here? What is it? What do I know to be true about myself? And ultimately, I realized that the final penny that had to drop was, I have labeled this aliveness within me as me, and that was stopping me. That was also a false definition of me. The only thing that is here is, all I can say is, yes, there is a body here, there are thoughts here, and there is an aliveness here, but it's nothing to do with me. Then you go back into what the wisdom is teaching you. And the wisdom teaches you that deep within every single one of us, there is one spark of light, aliveness, divine light. Then you can start adding all of these other labels on there, and you say, oh, these other labels make sense. I can call it whatever I want, but it's not me. It just is. There is a spark of aliveness inside you, and you have mislabeled it me. It's not you. That's where the masters came in and said, that's nothing to do with you. Let go of that as well. That label that you call me is not you. It doesn't belong to you. It belongs to this. And then I could relax. It belongs to this. It's not mine. So then I no longer have that same sense of tight grip over these things. I know these things are going to go. The work of spirituality is to let go of these things before they get taken away from you. Because they are going to be taken away from you. Your body is going to be taken away from you. Your age and your youth is certainly going to be taken away from you. All your loved ones are certainly going to be taken away from you. It's not a question of if, it's a question of when. Everything that you own is going to go. I had a beautiful realization once. I was driving down the motorway, and I, for some reason, remembered my old car, the first car I ever drove. And I think maybe I drove past a car scrapyard or something. And I was thinking, oh, where is my old car? I wonder where it is now. I'd gone past this car scrapyard. And I realized that it probably isn't still in the same shape that it is. I don't think somebody is driving the very first car that I owned. That's probably been scrapped. But then where are those parts? What is a car made of? It has a metal body, it has glass windows, it has plastic interiors. And I thought, you know what? They're all here somewhere. It hasn't vanished. The metal body of my car is somewhere. Maybe it's in a can of Coke these days, or it's something else. That glass is somewhere. Maybe it's in somebody's windows. That plastic is somewhere. Maybe it's being used for something else. And I was like, oh, that's such a beautiful thought. That my car, the original car that I first ever drove, is not in the same shape, but it can't go anywhere. It's just here. It's just in all these different parts. And I thought that was really a wonderful sort of experience for me. And the same was true of everyone that I've ever known and everyone I've ever loved. They're still here somewhere. It's in the more subtle parts of it. You know, the earth goes back into the earth, the breath goes back into the breath, water goes back into the water, but it doesn't go anywhere. It's here. And so that same thing is going to happen to you. You're going to go back into the earth. And so what the spiritual masters are teaching us is, you've held on to this thing like it's something real. It's not real. It's going to go. This is going to go. Your body's going to go. Your loved ones are going to go. Your favorite clothes are going to go. Your favorite gadgets are going to go. Don't hold on to anything, because they are going to go. Can you let go before they get taken away from you? And most importantly, can you let go of yourself? Because this is going to get taken away from you as well.
Thank you, Virji, for being here today. You mentioned that you're a father, and you also mentioned that it was at 20 years old when you discovered this wisdom. So my question is whether you can give us a practical example of a practice or an activity that I can incorporate into the lives of my young children to expose them at an earlier age to this wisdom, oneness, spirituality.
Yeah, the thing with teaching children is that it's very easy to try to deflect and want to teach this to our children. And one of the things I had to learn was, do I really know it myself? And I can understand as a parent, you don't want to focus on yourself totally, because you lose that opportunity to give them this when they're young. I've tried with my children to share whatever I can. And one of the things I've had to do is, because from a very young age I had a passion that they should also know this wisdom, is that I had to force myself to take whatever I thought I understood and simplify it into the most simple, basic understandings. And one of the first things that we can help our children do is to help them understand their emotions. I remember that when my eldest son was very young, maybe 3, 4 years old, he used to get angry and frustrated. And one of the ways that I would help him understand that is I used to call it the angry snake is biting you. And I find that that analogy works quite well, because what you let them know is that these emotions that you're experiencing, they're not you. They're just something that has grabbed a hold of you right now. And so I would show him a little technique that I would call big breathing. Let's do big breathing. And it was close your eyes, focus on your breathing. And I used to say that if you do your big breathing, angry, the snake that's biting you, it can't hold on. It starts to let go a little bit. It starts to loosen its grip. And then he would do his big breathing and he would say, Daddy, the angry snake is not biting me so much anymore. But the only reason I was able to share that with him was I had to first learn what is going on when I get frustrated and angry. Do I know what's going on? How do I let go of my own anger? That's one of the hardest things to do, is when you're angry, you don't want to let go. You just keep thinking, no, I'm angry because of you. You've done something wrong. And so you just keep thinking about that. But then once you've started to learn first within yourself, do I know how to let go of my own anger? Because Kids will tell you, if you try to teach them something and they look at you and say, Mommy and Daddy, but you don't let go of your anger, everything you teach falls apart. So you really must be willing to learn this stuff yourself. And one of the most beautiful things that I've seen from a very dear friend of mine is that whenever there was something that he wanted to teach his child, he was honest with himself, and he would say to his child, actually, I don't know the answer. Let's go find out together. I am willing to learn at the same time as you. And the bonding that that creates, when you also say to your child, let's learn it together. If we're going to learn how to let go of our anger, let's help each other. Because that really shows your child that you are willing to learn at the same time. You're also willing to let go of your own anger and teach them how to let go of it doing it. And then what happens is you create this partnership with them. And sometimes when they're feeling angry, you can advise them and say, you're going through that emotion again. Remember what we learned? But the opposite is also true. Sometimes you're going through the emotion and your child will come up to you and say, Mommy, you need to let go. And that's the point where you have to let go. You have to actually have that sort of shared partnership with it. So it isn't a concept that you learn. I would honestly teach, if there's nothing else that you take away of what to teach children, teach them about their emotions. But teach them once you have an understanding of your own emotions, or do it together.
If you enjoy learning spiritual teachings and you're looking to deepen your understanding, the most effective way is to learn with a group of friends. Right now, you can set up your very own Nanak Naam meetup group from the comfort of your own homes. Gather your friends, family members or colleagues and start your very own wisdom group by visiting livingwithwisdom.org. There, you'll find a range of Nanak Naam courses designed specifically for groups that you can watch together and discuss. A growing number of people have already started their very own wisdom groups, and it's having a huge positive impact on their lives. Find out how easy it is to start your own wisdom group by visiting livingwithwisdom.org.
Welcome, Satpal Singh. Thank you for coming all this way here to share your wisdom with us and for all the work you do online as well. A couple of questions, if I may. One, we hear the buzzword manifestation a lot these days. Does wisdom have anything to do with manifestation, and does it have a relationship? Does it tell us anything? And the other question I have is, if you wish to practice meditation, but you feel like your mind is too cluttered, what tips could you give to somebody to help declutter their minds and come to a place where they can meditate in peace?
Thank you. A very important question is about manifestation and the law of attraction. I want to be very clear. Anyone who teaches you a law of attraction is leading you down a wrong path. Because it isn't higher wisdom. Ultimately, what they are teaching you is the law of attachment, the law of materialism, the law of obsessing over one thing until you get it. This is not higher wisdom, and unfortunately, there are so many of these spiritual influences that are saying, I'm spiritual and now I can manifest money and I will teach you how to manifest anything in your life. First, learn how to manifest peace. Once you know how to manifest peace, then you won't need the law of attraction, because you don't need anything else. The higher wisdom is, are you able to manifest within you? Are you able to find a space within you where you no longer need anything else? That is the higher wisdom. So please be vigilant against law of attraction. Now, notice what I didn't say. I didn't say it doesn't work. I think it works. In fact, it's very logical. If you're going to obsess about something every single day, you're going to go out and try and do everything that you can to get it. They try and teach you that the universe is on your side. The universe doesn't care whether you get a shiny new car or not. I'll give you that information for free. The universe is not sitting there waiting for you to come up with your lists so that it can push things towards you. But if you constantly think about one thing day in and day out, you will find opportunities open up. I'm not saying law of attraction doesn't work. This is how it works. You think about something again and again and again. And then where something happens in your life that you wouldn't have seen as a way to link with your obsession, you now find a way to link it. Those people who are teaching you, they will say, the universe has opened a door. No, that's not what's happened. All that's happened is you keep thinking about it so that in every scenario that you see, oh, shiny car. Shiny car is there as well. You look outside and you say, oh, that's the color of the car that I want. See, the universe is sending it towards me. No, it's the law of obsession. That's really what the law of attraction is you're just obsessing over it. Spiritual masters have no interest in teaching you that stuff. They're trying to teach you the law of detachment. Be peaceful whether it comes or not. And that's not the same as saying don't work for anything. By all means, go and work. By all means, build yourself a wonderful life. Have money, have a house, have all the lovely things that you need to. But know that inner peace is nothing to do with those things. Inner peace is inner. It's called inner for a reason. That's something that you have to manifest internally. Now, the question is around how do I declutter the mind? What is the mechanism that the mind creates clutter? I want us to be very clear on this. When you say declutter your mind, what you're really talking about is overthinking? Sure, overthinking. Constantly thinking, constantly having things, lots of I love that analogy, lots of tabs open, right? And everything is hanging in the air. It's like all these spinning plates, I have to do all these things. Those are showing you something that you haven't necessarily correlated it to. What all those tabs are actually showing you is all the things that I'm attached to. I care about all of those things. I need all of those things to go well. I need to do things with my house, I need to do things with my kids, I need to make sure that my colleagues at work are doing the jobs that they're meant to do, I need to pay these bills, I need to do this, and I'd also like to do this work for the community. These are all the things that I care about, that I'm attached to. That's fine. You do need to do all those things. But is that overthinking all the time, always worrying about it, is that serving you? Is that helping you? What happens when you have all those tabs open, and let's say you get to a point when you've solved this problem, this problem, this problem, and you're able to close all your tabs, then what? What are you hoping for? When you close all those tabs, you're hoping for new tabs? Or are you hoping to reach a point within yourself where you say, I don't want to open any more tabs. I'm okay, I'm happy. You're hoping to reach a space within yourself. The reason I know the answer is because it's true for all of us. We're all hoping to reach a place within ourselves when we don't have to keep rushing. We don't have to keep firefighting and solving every single problem. You're hoping for inner peace. Every one of us is hoping for inner peace. So the question is really, are you willing to do the work for inner peace? And if you're constantly thinking, then you have to allow yourself some time and saying, am I willing to sit and not think about those things all the time? And that's where you start to realize that actually the reason that you're overthinking is sometimes you're not willing to let go of all those things. And so what I do with meditation, one of the meditations that I do, is I visualize all the things that I carry around as though they're big rocks that I'm carrying in my bag. And I think, okay, I need to solve this problem. So what I do, in my mind, I visualize all my work-related problems. It's like this heavy rock that I'm carrying here, right? I'm carrying it, I lift it out, and I literally visualize this as I sit and I close my eyes. I lift it out, and I say, I'm not able to solve all the work-related problems, and I'm not going to throw them away, I'm just going to put them down. So I'm not carrying them. And then I just think, okay, what is something else that I worry about? I worry about finances. I lift that big, I collect all my thoughts to do with finances. That doesn't mean I think about all of them. I visualize collecting all of them and I put it down. Okay, I don't need anything to do with that. Then what's the next thing? I worry about my family members. Okay, my problems are still going to be there. I'm allowing myself to take individually, step by step, all of these things down and say, I know I have to deal with all these things. I know that they're not going away. I'm not throwing them away. But right now, I'm allowing myself the space to simply put those things down. And can I sit in peace? And when I sit in peace, one thought comes back and another thought comes back and another thought comes back. This is why I came first with the question, what is the mechanism of overthinking? The mechanism of overthinking is the inner voice. Something else, something else. What about this? What about this? What about this? And so the teaching within this tradition, Guru Nanak gives you, is change the words that are in your head. He said, Shabad is the Guru. So what he says is, use a mantra or a wisdom word, a phrase of something that just says, I'm not dealing with all of this stuff right now. I just pick one phrase and I just repeat it. Because I know if I don't have something in my mind, then my mind is going to start talking about all the other things that it needs to think about. So I'm just going to take one phrase. And the easiest mantra that I say that anyone should start with, if they're not familiar with just reciting one word again and again, just start with thank you. So I'm giving myself the space to say, yes, I know I have to deal with all these things, but I'm just giving myself some time where I'm learning to not have to carry all of that stuff. So sit just for a couple of minutes a day and just say thank you, thank you, thank you. And see if you can be comfortable not carrying all those thoughts. Because if you've been carrying them for such a long time, you're actually so used to carrying it that you're not willing to put them down. You have to learn to be willing to put them down. You're not solving the problems, you're not getting rid of your problems. You're simply saying, I don't have to carry them all the time. And you'll try and do it before you sleep, and you'll notice how much better you sleep at night.
So my question is, just want to understand the concept of Anand, or the courage of Anand, or the stages. So Maharaj talks about 4 stages, and again, it's about yourself, stage 1, 2, 3, and 4. And even from your messaging, like the message is yourself and do it yourself as well. So it's all about yourself and you do it yourself. So what is the role of a partner, or how can they support you on this journey?
So I'm trying to understand the question. You talked about Anand, you talked about yourself, and then you talked about a partner.
Yeah.
Can you just clarify the question for me?
Okay, Anand courage, right? You again, when you look at the translation of 4 stages, it talks about you, how you can start from stage 1, go up to stage. But you're doing with a partner, right?
Yes.
That ceremony. And then your messaging, you talk about, again, it's your development, you do it, and you do it yourself. Like your inner peace, it's within you. Don't worry about other person. So what is the role of her?
So that's an interesting question, because you're right to pick up on something that doesn't get talked about. The Anand Karaj, for those who are not familiar, is the name of the wedding ceremony within the Sikh tradition. And the words literally mean an act of bliss, Anand Karaj. Anyone who's married will tell you most of married life is not marital bliss. But anyway, the ceremony is called an act of bliss, maybe because that's the last moment of bliss that you'll know. The truth of the matter is that the wisdom within the verses actually go through 4 phases of spiritual development, which lead to ultimate supreme divine bliss. And within that wisdom, within those stages, there's no mention of a partner. It's a personal journey that you have to go on. So even though the ceremony is about 2 people getting together, that is for your worldly life. There's lots of benefits for having a life partner and both of you working as a team to achieve your individual goals. There's nothing more beautiful than having a partner and a best friend in your life and spending your time with them. But the reason that the wisdom doesn't talk about it is because they can't help you with the inner work. That is ultimately a journey that you have to go on your own. It's a path that you have to walk on your own. Now, there is nothing better than having another partner who is also doing the same thing. When 2 of you are doing the same thing, you're not doing it for each other. You're not doing it to each other, but you help and you can complement each other. and having someone who's also on the same path in their own life. Ultimately, when you meditate, when you go within yourself, you have to do that alone. But when you have a life partner who's also doing that, you can share your ideas with each other. You can learn from each other. There are times when you're going to need to be lifted up in your own moments of weakness, and that's where your partner can help you. So it's very important, if you are going to go down a married life, that you go down this path with somebody who's also aligned with you spiritually, who's also going through the same things as you. Now, some people are not in that situation. Some people find spiritual wisdom after they get married. You know, it becomes difficult sometimes. People say, you're not the person I married anymore. I don't want to be with somebody who's going down a spiritual path. We thought we were going to go down a different path together. So that's when it does become a challenge, where in a marital relationship, you are the only one that is going down the spiritual path and someone else is not. And what I always say to that is, ultimately, spirituality has to reflect in your day-to-day life. What is the point of that spiritual path if it's not improving your life? If there's no demonstrable way that you can show that this is helping me, this is improving my life. I no longer get as angry as I used to get. I'm more patient within myself. I'm more loving within myself. When your partner can see the benefits of your spiritual path, then it may inspire them to also go down that spiritual path. But more often than not, what happens is people don't go down a spiritual path, they go down a religious path. And so they're doing lots of practices, and in fact, they become more rigid. No, I can't even share the same plate as you because I'm now religious and you're not. I can't go to the same events as you because I now go here and you go there. That's where conflict comes. So a spiritual path is a path of self-improvement, and that should be self-evident. You should be able to see that you're actually improving. You should be able to see it, and other people around you should be able to see that you are becoming better. Your spirituality should be a beacon of light for other people. It should inspire other people that, hey, this guy's getting so much joy from something. Maybe I should try it. I should go down this path as well. So be clear on what that is. There is nothing better than having a life partner who has also some of the same spiritual goals as you. But it should also be clear that spirituality is an individual path. It is something that you have to ultimately tread on your own.
Satpal Singh. My question, I guess it's on the opposite end of the spectrum to the question you've just answered, is what does Sikhi Gurbani say about reincarnations? Because I hear about the khands. Such khand obviously is the final finality. But what does the Gurbani say? Does it have a detailed description of, do we sort of, is it a finalness, or do we actually reincarnate like, Hindus believe? Is it the same with Sikhi?
So the question is, according to the wisdom within the Sikh tradition, Guru Nanak spiritual wisdom, what is the advice around reincarnation, afterlife, what happens? Is there a final destination that we go to? Every other religious path has been a path of trying to quantify the universe, figure out the universe, answer questions about how the universe is. Guru Nanak comes along and says, nobody knows the higher truth about where your soul goes. And in fact, Guru Nanak says, I'm not going to worry about that. Instead, I'm going to figure out, how do I make my life better while I'm alive? I'm not trying to create a version of spirituality for my life for an afterlife benefit. The version of spirituality that Guru Nanak wants to teach and follow is that, does it make my life great now? I'm not trying to get to somewhere afterwards, because the truth of the matter is, nobody has gone to an afterlife. Nobody has genuinely died and come back. There are lots of people who claim to have near-death experiences, but nobody has ever died and been born back again. So if nobody has gone somewhere else afterwards and been able to come back, The question you have to ask yourself is, why am I interested in what's going to happen after I die? Why don't I just focus on improving my life now? The way I've contended with this question is, do I remember who I was before I was born? And my honest answer is, I have no memory. I don't know if I was anything. I don't have a memory of a past life. I don't know. Maybe I wasn't in another being. Maybe I was just floating around. I don't know. So the reality is, I don't know what was going on before I was born. I don't know what's going to happen after I die. But what do I know? What I know is right now, there is an opportunity available to me, and that opportunity is bliss. I can experience this moment as a heaven, or I can experience this moment as a hell. Which one do you want? Because the same moment can be experienced in two different ways. I could look at all of the problems that are happening in my life right now, or I can look at all the beauty that is happening in my life right now. So you can pick, do you want heaven now? Do you want hell now? Why are you worried about what's going to happen when you die? Right now, you can be in heaven. And the wisdom teaches that when I sit amongst other spiritual seekers and we're all sharing spiritual wisdom, that is where you find heaven. Heaven isn't somewhere that you go after you die. Within the community of people who are all sharing higher wisdom, because each person themselves is feeling elevated. Each person is in a better, lighter space within themselves. The masters have said, I don't know where heaven is afterwards, but I know that where heaven is here on earth. And heaven here on earth is with other spiritual seekers, being surrounded by this wisdom, being cushioned by all of this spiritual wisdom. That's where heaven is now. And when I don't have this, I experience hell. The moment that I am in my higher awareness, when I recognize that this is all part of a oneness, I feel like I'm in heaven. When I just feel my own ego, me, I need to do this, I need to do that, I'm so worried about this, that's when I'm in my hell. So heaven or hell, as far as the wisdom is concerned, has nothing to do with after you die. Heaven or hell is now. Find heaven now, most likely you will find heaven afterwards. If you don't find heaven now, most likely you will not find heaven afterwards.
Sashrikal Virji, thank you for coming. I'm really glad I've been listening to your videos, and I'm totally inspired, and I've learned a lot from that. So today I have two questions for you. My first question is that I think you've touched upon this point that so I would like to relate it to my experience, like from very beginning, like from the childhood till now, like there are a lot of, like I've been living with my parents, and sometimes when we are living with our family members, we feel that we have lack of freedom. Like since I'm the only child, there are various experiences that I have been blamed for many things. So you've been living with all these things and all these experiences from last 26 years. And after these years, when you are using the tools, the spiritual wisdom, the higher wisdom, when we learn from Gurbani, and we use these Simran, we are doing Simran, we are doing meditative techniques, tools. But when we are starting a new family, I have observed that all those experiences, all those I've gone through it, even if I'm learning and implementing it in my life, there are times when I fall down. I feel that how will I be able to grow in my life or improve so well, so quickly with all these past experiences. So if you have some guidance that how do I do it, it's a slow process. Even if I am doing from last 2-3 years or 3-4 years, it will still take time for me to, I will have to do it daily, obviously, in my day-to-day life, as you mentioned, but there might be something more that I have to do so that I don't fall down so so often. And my second question is, when you have taught about this meditation technique, and there are various tools, and we also learn from Gurbani, that how do we rise above our body? Like how do we leave our body and go beyond our body to find that inner peace and inner wisdom, to know our own higher purpose of life? So apart from all these tools and Simran and the Gurbani, higher wisdom, like, is there anything else that we can connect and we can go beyond our body?
Thank you. Some very, very important questions. The first question is around, why do I fall down so much in my life? Knowing some of the ways that I was brought up, some of the different experiences that I had, not wanting to bring them into my new life going forward, I still find that I'm carrying some of those old experiences, and they come out in ways that I don't want them to. Even though I feel like I've learned spiritual wisdom, I'm still falling down. I'm still going into my old ways. You know, when you were a baby, you didn't just overnight learn how to walk. As a baby, you first had to learn to just be comfortable crawling, and you learned how to crawl. Then slowly, slowly you would pick yourself up, and then you would hold on to something and you would walk holding on to something. Then one day you let go of one hand, then you let go of another hand, and even then you're walking. But every time you're walking, what would happen? You would fall down again. If you watch a baby, they don't get disappointed when they fall down. Every time they fall down, they get back up again and they try again. And when they try again, they fall down again. But I assume when you're walking now and you're not falling down all over the place. You learnt somewhere, all of those times that you fell down became a learning experience. So you realized, oh, I fell down when I did it this way, so I'm going to try something different. I fell down when I tried that, I did something different. Now you can walk without falling down. But you had to fall down that many times in order to learn how not to do it that way. That's how you learnt when you were a baby. And when you're an adult, we do fall down again and again and again. The problem as adults is most of us are not willing to look at, why did I fall down? And so we just keep falling down again and again and again. The one who is lucky learns to see, I fell down there. I was not supposed to act in that way. That's my mother talking. That's not me talking. That's coming through. That's the way my parents raised me. I thought I was going to raise my children differently. And you start to realize that you are here because of all the things that have happened to you. You are carrying all of your past experiences. You are responding based on who you were and all the things that you've learned up till this point. But the conscious person, the spiritual person who's willing to look at themselves and recognize, I fell down. I shouldn't have acted in that way. Every time you do that and you watch yourself, you will, over time, it is a slow process. You answered your own question. It is a slow process. You will catch yourself falling down, but be willing to at least say, I made that mistake. Within this spiritual tradition, there is a beautiful name given to the followers of this tradition. And the name calls you students, learners. And the great thing about being a learner is that you have to admit, I don't know. That's what a learner is, somebody who says, I don't know, I'm willing to learn, I'm willing to know. In this tradition, you don't say, I know. What I say is, you've entered into a school and you're always called a learner. You're never called a graduate. You never graduate from the school. You're always a Sikh. You're always learning. Which means, till your very last breath, be willing to fall down. What was the second part of the question?
Meditation. I think it was around meditation and Gurbani. What else?
going beyond your body. From what I've seen, there is no part of this wisdom that wants you to go beyond your body. Where are you going to go? Where are you trying to go? No, stay within your body. The wisdom teaches you, Thir kar baiso har jan pyare. Where you need to go is within you. Man tu jot sarupa hai, apna mool pachan. Go within yourself. No part of this wisdom is teaching you to go beyond your body. Go here. Stay here. Don't go somewhere else. Mat kat jahi jiyo. Don't go somewhere else. What your mind does is your mind is always going somewhere else. Your mind is always having an out-of-body experience. Sometimes it's here, sometimes it's there, sometimes it's in the past, sometimes it's in the future. The one place that your mind isn't is here. Yeah? So it's quite natural for you to think that you're supposed to go somewhere else. You're not supposed to go somewhere else. In fact, you're always trying to go somewhere else. Stay here. That's what the wisdom is teaching you. Stay here. What is here? Be still within yourself. Be calm within yourself. Practice being here. And the most powerful technique that the Guru gives you is Shabad, mantra. Literally get into the habit of just saying one thing again and again and again. They call it Naam, the divine name. Because what is going on inside all of our minds is my name, me, me, me. One of the best understandings that I ever learned was every single one of us is meditating all the time. You're all doing it, even right now, we're all meditating. But what you're meditating on is me. I need to do this, I need to do that, what about this, what about that, he said this one still owes me money, I still need to do that. That's what you're meditating on, we're all doing it all the time. So you all know how to meditate in this technique. Guru Nanak's technique is the simplest technique for mankind because you're all doing it. He just says, take that word that you're using, called me, 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 give that to me. He says, give it to me. Here's a different name. Stop repeating your own name. You're not that special. Repeat God's name. Repeat the name of that spiritual wisdom that is in charge of creating this whole universe. Why are you going to repeat your own name? What have you done? What have you achieved? There is something far greater happening right now. Sing its praises. So that's a technique. All day, every day, your mind is meditating. Notice, watch yourself. At so many points in the day, your mind is just chattering away. There are so many opportunities for you to apply this wisdom while you're going for a walk, while you're having a shower, while you're doing the dishes, while you're eating. Yet we don't want to do that. So what we do is we start scrolling on our phones and going on social media because we don't want to be quiet for a moment. Most of us can't go to the toilet without our phones now. That's what's happened because we're just in this habit of constantly. So if we're not singing our own praises, we're just distracting ourselves with something else. And then we say, oh, I don't have time for meditation. You have all the time in the world. You have to be willing to apply this technique, and this technique doesn't require you to go anywhere. Talk about an out-of-body experience. You don't have to go out of anything. You don't even have to leave your home. You don't even have to stop what you're doing. That is what this technique is. Don't even stop what you're doing. Keep doing what you're doing. Uthat, baitat, sovat, naam. While you're standing, use this technique. While you're sitting, use this technique. While you're listening to somebody else babble on, do this technique. Whilst you're lying down, do this technique. There are so many opportunities for you to do this. Think about the number of moments in your day where your mind is just distracted doing something else. So don't wish for more time. Wish for more quality time within your mind.
Hey, Uncle Satpal, we're all immensely grateful for your learnings that you have imparted with us, and we really appreciate the sensitivity and the compassion and the patience that you delivered your answers with. I'm just reading out one of the questions. Despite passing by the Gurdwara Sahib almost every day, I find myself resisting the idea of going inside. This reluctance stems from my discomfort with some of the Sangat who are regular visitors. I feel my whole reason behind going there is to listen to Gurbani, but most of the times I can't seem to even understand the priest. Could you please provide me with some advice or perspective on how to approach this situation? Your wisdom and guidance would be greatly appreciated.
One of the things you're going to find is that when you listen to me, it's going to turn you away from some of the more traditional religion, the traditional people who keep going back to the same old religious ways. So it's dangerous for you to be here, because you're not going to want to go back into the old temples, the old gurdwaras, listening to the same old stuff that they've been teaching you. But there's also a reason that you're here, because that stuff doesn't resonate. The truth of the matter is, most religious institutions are not teaching you this wisdom. Whatever your background is, the truth of the matter is the Gurdwara has failed you. It is not teaching you this wisdom. So, you have to then ask yourself, what am I going to do now? The most important thing is that you connect yourself with this wisdom and not with those people who pretend to be the followers of this wisdom. There are many fakes out there. And one day you may realize that I'm also one of those fakes. Don't connect with me. Don't get stuck to me. Don't get affiliated. Oh, I don't listen to those guys, I listen to this. No. There is a wisdom that is above all of this. Go straight to the source. And one of the things that most of us are too afraid to do, especially within the Sikh tradition, is just read Gurbani. Just read the wisdom. Just study the wisdom. We have become afraid of it, so much so that we wrap it in golden cloth and we bow down to it, but we never open it and read it. We are afraid of it, and something has gone wrong, that we're not good enough. Oh, I haven't done this today. I haven't showered today. Or I ate meat today, so I'm not even able to read this stuff. So much utter nonsense is being taught here. I was once sitting in a restaurant, and my wife and I were sitting there, and the lady serving says, "Can I ask you a question?" She said, "I eat meat. Am I allowed to read this wisdom? Am I allowed to do the daily prayers?" And I was so saddened that she walked around for such a long time, this waitress, thinking that she couldn't even access this wisdom. And I said, please stop worrying about what you eat. Start reading the wisdom. Start accessing the wisdom. Start doing it on a daily basis. Then however you want to change your lifestyle, that'll come afterwards. But we've created these massive barriers. So I want every single one of you to go right back to the source and take out all the middlemen. And that means not aligning yourself with any of these groups that are out there. No religious groups. None of them are right. Only the wisdom is right. Go back to the original wisdom. Go back to the source. And the great thing is, you don't have to go to any place. You can download it on your phone. The Guru Granth Sahib, the highest wisdom, is available in any language. But that wisdom itself has become difficult to understand. That wisdom, I compare it to when I was young. I used to go to my English studies in class, and the teacher used to say, today class we're going to read Shakespeare. And I used to open the Shakespeare book, and I was like, I can read all the words, and every single word is in a language that I know, but I don't understand what he's saying. Shakespeare was normal English 500 years ago. Shakespeare didn't write a complicated language. In fact, Shakespeare wrote his plays for the common man. They used to just go into markets and just perform those. And the common person understood that language. Guru Nanak's wisdom was also about 500 years ago, and he also wrote for the common man. But what you're reading now is like Shakespearean Punjabi. And so you do need someone to help you interpret what does What was Guru Nanak trying to say? You can try and read Shakespeare on your own, but your English teacher will be able to help you and say, okay, this is what he means. These are these words. So access the wisdom and access genuine people that can help you understand this wisdom. And the final bit of the puzzle that I would say is then access a community that is a safe space for you to talk about these things. Create your own groups. It doesn't have to be in the temples. It doesn't have to be in the gurdwaras. It doesn't have to be with people that look religious. In fact, stay away from the people that look religious. They will come with all of their own baggage. I'm not saying this to be controversial. I'm saying this because I've had to make the difficult decision to move away from lots of other people who have said that they've been religious, but when they open their mouth, what comes out of their mouth is not the same as what my guru teaches. And most people are not willing to go directly to the source. They want the quick, easy shortcut. So they just say, well, that's what these people are saying. They say that you're not supposed to eat this, so I'll just stop eating this. They say you're supposed to do this, so I'll just stop doing this. Go back to the source. What's the source saying? And you will find some difficult truths. The source is saying something different to what a lot of these groups and religious institutions are doing. And it goes back to the question that was asked around, why did I start this? I started this because I couldn't believe the nonsense that people were teaching and continue to teach every day. And I'm not saying that everything I'm teaching is right. I've told you that I'm not a teacher, I'm just another student. But one thing I'm very clear on, there's a lot of rubbish that's going on there. There's a lot of things, and you can go to any religious institution, go to anywhere, go to the Hindu temples, they're teaching nonsense. They're practicing all these things, then you're saying, what are you doing? They're not reading their own wisdom. Go to your churches, go to your mosques. They're not teaching the original wisdom. I'm not aligning you with one religion or the other. I don't care what religion you belong to. Go back to the source, go back to the higher truth. But that's hard, because you then have to go and start reading Shakespeare. Right? So, be willing to do that much effort. Go back to learn the original wisdom, and you can do it no matter who you are. No matter what you've eaten today, no matter whether you went and colored your hair or cut your hair or did this or did that, no matter what clothes you're wearing, no matter what time of day it is, you can open that wisdom and you can have a direct conversation with that wisdom. And if you don't understand it, surround yourself with other people that can help you understand it. That's the honest truth.